probably pick it up.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
You guys want a microphone over there? Seems like they're all on our side.
Who has the minutes? Okay, it looks like we're live. Can I read them? Yep.
Thanks. Okay. All right, Joan. I got all that.
Good to go.
Yes, we're
Okay.
outside and
I called the meeting to order at 7:03 maybe. Old business, pending claims and litigation, Hangdog Lane LLC versus Town of Summers, Conservation Commission et al.
so we have our town attorney, Carl Landolina, here to kind of help us through, but I guess my brief synopsis would be that we got a decision back from the judge on this appeal from the intervener on our approval of application 740 for that Hangdog Lane. That was the driveway extension in the Upland Review area, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but the judge found in favor of the commission on every item except for one little technicality that apparently we're supposed to state as a collective on the record the reason for approval. And while I had made a comment and Drew made a comment, that wasn't a sufficient collective statement that everyone was approving for these reasons. Usually we've only worried about it if we're going to deny something, but I guess maybe that's something we're supposed to do every time and say why we're approving.
So, yeah, thanks for the record, Carly. I mean, that is a pretty good overall discussion or synopsis of the case. The judge found that there was substantial evidence in the record to support your decision, but one of the arguments made by the plaintiff was that there's a section in our regulations, which is 211.11C, which I'll read to you. It says, in the case of an application which received a public hearing pursuant to a finding by the commission that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on wetlands and water courses, a permit shall not be issued unless the commission finds on the basis of the record. Am I reading the wrong thing? Okay, I'm sorry. The commission shall state upon the record the reasons and bases for its decision, and in the case of any public hearing, such decision shall be based fully on the record as such hearing and shall be in writing and shall, as applicable in accordance with section 211.10 of these regulations, incorporate a statement relative to the consideration of feasible and prudent alternatives. So that's that language is in pretty much all of the state's wetlands regulations. These are basically a template that was first drafted by the Department of Environmental Protection, and most towns have incorporated the specific statutory provisions into their own regulations. So, according to the judge, that even though there was substantial evidence on the record to support your decision, he didn't follow this rule that you've made for yourselves. So, in the near future, until you decide to maybe change this, and maybe take the word shall out and put may in there, or something akin to that, you're going to have to make a written finding on every decision that you make going forward. So this is sort of a template you can use going forward, but this one is fact specific for this particular application. So, you could certainly, I think, use at least 1, 2, 3, and 4 as a beginning place, and then you'd have to make a statement regarding prudent and feasible alternatives somewhere, in there, and then you'll be finished, but you're gonna have to start doing that. So to the extent that you may make decisions tonight, you're gonna have to do this. So again, you can take this, what I've given you, and state this on the record, and then authorize staff to produce a written statement of the reasons for approval or denial, and authorize your chairperson to sign that based upon the vote that thereafter takes place. So, okay?
Carl?
Yes.
Drew Kukuchka. Thank you for that summary, and, if I understood, I wanna look at, another point, read the statutory language again, but, I thought when you were reading it out, you said that it was pursuant to a public hearing in the case that we shall provide
So
that.
I actually started reading the wrong provision, so.
Okay.
So it says, the commission shall state upon its record the reasons and bases for its decision, comma. And in the case of a public hearing, comma, such decision shall be based fully on the record of such hearing and shall be in writing. So if you find, if you have a public hearing on a matter, you must do this, okay? Now, there's two ways, as you know, to have a public hearing. One is to find that there's significant activity, right? That the activity being proposed is significant.
Mm-hmm.
The other way is there's a petition for a public hearing. So, there is a recent case called Purnell, which just came out of the appellate court a few months ago, that talks about, so you know with feasible and proven alternatives, if there's a significant activity proposed, that you cannot approve an application unless you find that the alternative that you're acting on is the most feasible and most prudent. There are no alternatives that would have lesser impact on the wetlands, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's required under the statute, that's required. Prior to Purnell, the law as we understood it was that if you have a public hearing because someone asked for it as a petition, whether it's significant activity or not, right, that you must do the same thing, i.e. you must find that this is the most feasible and most prudent alternative. Purnell says no. The only time you must make a specific finding that the application is proposing the most feasible and most prudent alternative is when you find the activity to be significant. That's with feasible and prudent alternatives. The language you have here is sort of the same, except it's not really on point. It's, you know, we're talking about two ways to have a public hearing, right? So for right now, every time you have a public hearing, whether it's because the activity is significant or the activity is, or the public hearing is caused by a result of a petition,
Yep.
I think you need to follow 211.11C. Now, would I, you know, with your permission, I'll go and I'll look through Purnell and some other cases and see if we can't make a differentiation between the public hearings that are a result of a significant activity and those that are a result of a petition for a public hearing.
Yep.
And say, this really only applies to the former, not the latter.
Okay.
Right, so that's one way. Or the other way would be just to change the regulation to say that we may do this, not that we shall.
But I think.
Or you could just comply every time and have a written resolution ready for every application.
I think the question that I was getting at though is that, like for today's agenda, for example, we don't have any applications that are subject to a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So the provisions you're talking about don't apply to these applications. We can approve them
What
without.
doesn't apply is the in writing part.
Okay, we still have to state for the record verbally, but it doesn't have to be in writing.
Correct.
Okay.
And so do you resolve that by, like, rather than, in this case, you know, I as agent, stated something and one of our, commission members stated something, So to resolve any ambiguity, should it just be part of the motion that, we find this and that everyone votes on that statement as part of the motion?
Yeah, so you, when you deliberate, if somebody makes a motion, somebody seconds it, and then you start talking about the reasons why you might think this is, something to approve, and you get 5 different statements. Those are not a collective statement. The court said those are just utterances that occur during deliberations. So what this regulation requires is that there be a collective statement. Now, it could be something as simple as the first 4 things, what I've got, that the application, has all the material necessary under, 211(7), right? And that, you find this not to be a significant activity. Number 3 doesn't matter unless you have interveners in somebody, and you find that the criteria set in 211(10)B have been met. That might be enough.
Okay.
So I would say going forward, someone says, I move to approve, well, you're not gonna approve anything Jay brings here, so you have to worry about that. Somebody else, right? And, I move to approve application 7, 8, I don't know what number you are, and that you find that, A, necessary application materials have been submitted pursuant to 211(7). You find it's not a significant activity, therefore we didn't hold a public hearing. And then you find number 4, that the criteria set forth in 211(10)B have been met, and there's substantial evidence in the record to support that finding. End of story. But you have to do that every time.
Yeah. And if we did find it significant, then we'd have to talk about the
Feasible
feasible
improvement
improvement.
alternatives. Correct.
Yeah, and for all these years, we've never had.
Right, like 30 for me.
I know, I've only ever thought, okay, if we're denying, we need to be really careful, but yeah,
So the issue is here that all zoning type regulations, ZBA, planning and zoning, get a subdivision, all in these wetlands, all the statutes say you must state on the record the reasons for your approval. But there's no, lawyers will tell you, it doesn't mean anything, because if you don't, the judge will just search the entire record to see if there's any support. So there's no consequence to not doing that. Except when your regulation says, we shall do it.
okay. And we've been waiting years for the new model regulations to come out in
Yeah,
vain.
you'll be waiting, like the forestry regulations, we still waiting?
Yes.
25 years later.
Yep.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're going to be stating this in, motions, number 4, the commission finds the criteria set forth in section 211-10B have been met. I understand 1 and 2, what is section 211-10B saying?
Well, 1011B is your criteria for decision,
Oh,
which
okay,
is basically lifted right out of the statute.
okay,
The 6 criteria in the statute,
okay,
it's just lifted and put right in here. So rather than making a specific finding as to all of them, you just say all the criteria have been met.
okay.
So, yeah, you can probably do this by going, 1, making a statement about whether the activity is significant. In the case of, I guess tonight, you have no public hearing, so you've already made a finding that that's not the case, and jump down to 4, and those will be your stated reasons for approval, or in the if you wanna deny something, you'd say the application materials aren't satisfactory. We think the activity is significant, and we find that the criteria of 211-10B have not been met.
Now that everybody totally understands.
Yeah, we'll have to make a cheat sheet for,
Well,
Practice
don't
on all
our
these, find out
regulations
whatever.
come from the state?
yeah.
Well, we have our
We-
own regs, they're pretty much based on the state, so.
But we can tweak them, and there are other updates needed to the regs, there's things that are outdated in them otherwise, so they could use an overhaul, but it's this whole process, and normally, like, the state maintains the model regulations that we can adopt, but they haven't updated them since 2006, and for the past 5 years, we've been hearing it's like oh, they just need one more meeting with AG's office, and then somehow, and I pester of course, there's only one wetland staff person now at Deep, there used to be 3, there's 1, so every time I see her at a workshop, I pester her. But, it's frustrating, cause rather than 169 towns having to do the whole process of going through all the, legal updates and everything that's come out since the old regs, to just have a new template to use.
Maybe for the 50th year anniversary.
I know, right? It's the 50th anniversary.
That's coming up, couple years,
What
right?
is the
This
process?
year.
That's this
This
year,
year.
of the wetland statute.
It's 1974, I think, is it 2?
Apparently it's 2.
Yeah.
And I have a governor's proclamation with me as part of correspondence.
Oh, okay.
So what's the town process for just minor changes to our town regulations? Is that
There's like no
involved?
minor, it's like public hearing and a whole,
So even if you just wanna change a couple of words, it's the full
right?
process?
It's like changing the entire set of regulations,
Yeah.
it's the process is the same.
So we only wanna do it once.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah, you don't wanna piecemeal it.
So I guess in the meantime, we can come up with a cheat sheet. We honestly don't often have public hearings, so at
But
least
again,
normally we could do a
This would be
verbal.
something, take 1, 2, or excuse me, 1, 2, and 4, and say that.
Yeah.
That, and that'll be it for now, and then if there's
Every
some
application.
specific, you gotta be careful though, once, if you start having public hearings, and, you've got significant activity, then you've gotta make additional findings that say, this is the most feasible and prudent alternative.
Okay.
And the reason we find that is because there were 9 alternatives proposed, 1 through 8 didn't work for the following reasons. And again, this is something you don't make up, this is something the applicant is supposed to deliver to you.
Right.
Why 1 through 8 don't work, and their alternative is the best, and works the best.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so in the meantime, I could make just,
So-
copy and paste things and make a little cheat sheet for now, but.
So while we're talking about this, there were, I talked about Purnell a little bit. There was another case from 18 or 19 called, Starvin, which the judge, I mentioned to her and she mentioned it in her decision. You have something on your application, it's like it's question number 4, that
Okay.
says, am I right? The alternatives?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's one of the top questions, yeah. Name, address, what alternatives did you think about?
Yeah.
Everybody always fills it in, they're supposed to, because even though, activity may not be significant, they're still supposed to tell you what other alternatives they thought about and why they dismissed those. That's required on every application, all right? Now, Starville says, you don't have to bring maps and plans and show me 19 different drawings of these things that you dismissed.
Okay.
You just have to put it there and say, instead of the road going like this, we could have done it like this, but we decided not to because of drainage or whatever it is. So it doesn't, you don't need pretty maps and drawings for the alternatives.
Okay. Okay.
So what was that application number?
It was 740. If you wanna fill in your blanks on there.
So now,
Yep.
we all.
So I think someone can just read this top to bottom, and someone can second it, and then you can discuss it, and then I'll be on my way.
The only other minor, and it's funny, I wasn't even thinking about how Jay was here too. I don't know if you got this decision,
I didn't
okay.
read or see it, but I did hear about it.
Oh, okay, I could always, send it to you, but also, Mr. Zulik happens to be here as well, but, I think your last name's Zulick, correct? Okay, so just when we send it in, okay.
Okay, who wants to practice their out loud reading skills?
I don't mind reading, I wasn't here for the original.
I wanna read them.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was
should
before I was on the
anyone
Conservation
abstain
Commission.
from,
So if they weren't here,
Yeah.
because this is based upon the record, so,
yeah,
so do we have 3 that were here?
we have just 3.
That's
Oh,
fine.
wait, now I'm losing my mind, yes, you were.
No, he's in the record, I
Yeah.
remember
Oh,
reading
yeah,
your
cause
name
you
among
stated
them.
your reason for.
You were there, Dan.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought.
You did say something at one of the hearings, so. Yeah, so I think
He was there.
if you weren't here, you should not participate.
So it's okay as long as we've got,
If you got a quorum, then you've got a meeting.
okay,
To vote, all you need is a majority of those present and voting.
Okay,
okay,
So if there's three,
okay.
that's fine, even though three doesn't constitute a quorum.
okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
So one
Drew,
of the
why don't
three
you
has to-
read it just to,
Joan's looking at me, it looks
Yeah,
like.
I think you're in the nuts.
I didn't bring my glasses.
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
do you
Ah.
want me to read it
I
then?
can read this though,
Big.
unfortunately, but do I need to, so before I read it though, am I, making a motion or say anything?
So it's in the-
concept?
It embeds a motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can literally just read this, alright. Resolution regarding application number 740, correct?
Yes.
Rulier Family Limited Partnership for permit to conduct regulated activities related to the extension of a driveway and drainage activities of 50 Hand Dog Lane, Summers. I hereby move that application number 740 be approved based on the following. 1. The commission finds that the applicant has submitted all necessary application materials pursuant to section 211-7 of the wetland regulations, including but not limited to section 211-7E5, alternatives considered and rejected. Although the commission did not find the proposed activity significant, it held a public hearing pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 22A-42A C1 and section 211-19A of the regulations. 3. By separate vote, the commission found that a petition filed by the proposed interveners pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 22A-19 did not establish a reasonable likelihood of pollution of impairment to any natural resource of the state of Connecticut over which it has jurisdiction. 4. The commission finds that the criteria set forth in section 211-10B have been met by the applicant, and there is substantial evidence in the record to support this finding. 5. The commission also finds that the applicant's soil scientist, Rick Zulik, and a soil scientist engaged by the abutter, George Logan, have agreed to the location of the wetlands on the site. Furthermore, Mr. Zulik has testified that the proposed activity will have no adverse impact on wetlands or water courses. Should I note the typo? I think that's a typo, right?
Yeah, I think wetlands or,
On, should be or?
and in 3, should that have also been
That
pollution
should be
or
or.
impairment? Okay.
Okay. So wetlands or water courses, and Mr. Logan did not issue an opinion on adverse impacts. And 6, the commission also finds that an alternative proposal for the location of the driveway made by abutters engineers is not a feasible and prudent alternative, as applicant's expert Jay Ursery testified that the alternative proposal could cause increased runoff. The commission finds Mr. Ursery's testimony credible.
Dan, can you second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all right. Any questions or comments about this resolution before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Abstention 2 because they weren't here?
Abstain?
Okay, all right, so that motion carries.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Take care.
You don't wanna hang out for the next 2 hours?
What's that?
You know that driveway now?
Yeah, you can,
I thought we're gonna
Yeah.
like copy and paste this whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Second item under old business discussion, possible decision 775, 66 Egypt Road, Fort Town Fair. Fill in previously constructed mud bog within Upland Review Area, Union Agricultural Society of Summers, Ellington, East Windsor, and Enfield.
So, what was it, 2016, George, that, we approved the mud bogs, and just one of them was, constructed, correct, at the Fort Town Fairgrounds? And they've just gone through a lawsuit that now requires them to discontinue use of the mud bog.
correct.
And so now, they'd like to fill it back in, and it is in the upland review area. So they're back here just to make sure everything's on the up and up and, and, go through the proper process. And somewhere I have the file in this mess. Okay. So, let's see. And I don't know, so I have a couple pictures. So there's really dense vegetation now between the bog and the, wetland and like the tree line. But it's filled in quite a bit. There's actually a bunch of Phragmites, and other stuff in there, but, I don't know if you wanna look at this or not, but anyway, do you wanna say anything more than what I?
What has happened, the result of the legal suit, we decided to fill in the mudline. There's approximately area, it's what, 230 by 200 feet approximately, and it's ditch probably 30 inches, 24 inches deep, 6 inches among the bottom. Our fear is that some kid will get in there and something happen. Joanna, like she said, look at it. It's the same bound, we're not raising any elevations. It's coming right up to exactly the same elevation. All the fill will be clean fill, and most of it was what we would out of the area. If there's any questions possible I could answer?
Is that, separated right now by silt fencing from the wetland?
There was old silt fence there, I'm not sure of its condition now, and that's something we talked about, whether they, one idea was not to mow the vegetation,
Right.
That's currently between the mud bog and the old silt fence, to keep
Silt
that.
fence is still there, we got part of it, the guys were in there the other day, and there's also a good 10-foot area of that overgrown weed, and there's bales of hay behind that. So silt fence was put there after the hay bales were put in, just in case any mud had ever splashed over, and also at the entry point of the mud bog, there was a 10-foot high silt fence material, so nothing splashed in.
Yeah, there was like the chain link fence with like fabric, yeah.
Fabric, the full height of the fence, so basically that is all still there, we just wanna fill it in and walk away from it.
And, seed it down, or,
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
it will impact the seeded afterwards.
yeah. So, yeah, we talked about whether, yeah, if new silt fence should be put in, or new hay bales, or whether the vegetation might be sufficient as long as you don't mow it. I mean, one thing, I could also go out and take a look, just before they're gonna do it, or whatever everyone feels more comfortable with. I think they're happy to oblige.
With the old silt fence has been removed, or it's gonna be removed at some point?
It should ultimately be removed, like, once this is stabilized, just so it doesn't become pollution,
Right.
which it could be sort of at this point.
We
Yeah.
always left the old one up just for that extra precaution.
Yeah, while
And
it's being used, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
And now it's
still
very
basically
overgrown.
it's still there, except for the last 15 feet that they found and cut.
Yeah,
And that's, what, about 20 feet off the mud block?
something like that.
Only 20, 30 feet off of it. So we're asking permission to fill it back in and see where it goes. And I will say this committee doesn't move very fast, or not this committee, but our committee. It took us 3 years to build it after it was granted. So it'll be done in a 5-year period, and hope I'm still here.
I guess it's not gonna be done before this year's fair.
No, it will not be.
Okay, for purposes of discussion, can I have a motion to approve this application?
So, I wasn't here last meeting?
Well,
Did I
so
make a motion,
we
or?
We didn't
didn't
discuss
actually,
it.
we haven't met, but
Okay.
because this was received, we can act on it. And actually now, we've canceled 2 meetings in between, so now we sort of have to act on it, and,
Okay.
but,
I'll make a motion to approve application 775, 56 Egypt Road, to fill in the previously constructed mud bog within the upland review area.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'm not sure
I just realized that. Okay.
Oh.
Lise Wood is seated for Candace Ellis, please. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Um,
that's why I didn't say anything.
did we get a second? Okay, now there was, question about the fee.
Oh, yes, so, good point. So they had submitted a request, like our.
That's what they wanna know about.
Right. Yeah, our regulations do allow for a waiver of the conservation fee, and did I send that around?
There was something
The email?
attached with it, yeah.
Okay, but yes, there was a formal request to waive the $180 state fee. You know, they're a nonprofit, and they, kind of explained the reason for, this needing to be done now, and that it's a safety issue. And, let's just see, was there one other, what section is that? New. Oh God, I was looking on here. Okay, now I'm not gonna find it. Yeah. Oh man. No, I'm not gonna find that section on waiving the fee, but it's in here. God.
Who can find it first?
I know, oh.
Last time they waived the fee, it was just paid to the state.
Yeah. I must have gone right by it. It's a long meeting. I have a copy electronically that has that section highlighted on the computer. Did I print it? I don't think we have to quote it, I think we can just waive it, but I was hoping to find you the language, but, you know, if you're comfortable waiving it. We waived it the last time around, for them, so we had some rationale for it at the time. But I don't know why now I can't find it. Anyway, but if,
I think I found it.
oh,
So it's, section, well, second to last page of the regulations, section G waiver, so there's exemptions
oh
for
God, it's
board
right before the fees,
commissions.
that would make sense.
Yeah. Applicant may petition the commission to waive, reduce, or allow delayed payment of a fee. Such petitions shall be in writing and shall state fully the facts and circumstances to the commission. It says the commission may waive all or part of an application fee if the commission determines that A, the activity applied would clearly result in a substantial public benefit to the environment or to the public health and safety of the applicant, would reasonably be deterred from initiating activity. Primary results, and then it says the amount of the application fee is clearly excessive in relation to the cost of the town for reviewing the application. The commission shall state upon the record the basis for all actions under this subsection.
Alright, here we go. Got a lot more to add to that motion.
Well, so I guess first we could just do the, vote on whether to waive the fee, and.
We got a motion on the table.
Right, right.
It's gonna have to be amended anyway.
So,
think
can
you're
I
gonna have to,
amend?
I think you're gonna have to amend it and add
Yeah,
all the new language to.
That as well, yeah, we should also use this new template we have also. Do you wanna withdraw the motion?
I think I do.
Okay. Okay.
Seriously? So, this is, the way I understood it from Carl
It's
was
for
that
public
this
hearing.
is, so,
public hearing.
somebody makes a motion, somebody seconds it, we have a discussion, and then if we collectively agree as to why we're approving it, then we make that statement for the record.
Well,
For me to state that the commission feels this way as part of my motion seems most premature, if you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying,
Carl had to leave already, right?
right, but I don't know,
You see
like
the-
on this one, he bundled it in because that way it's a collective thing. I guess you could separately have these findings, but you wouldn't wanna have a motion to approve and vote on it unless you've also found that these other things are true.
Yeah, which in part comes by that conversation that you would, in theory, have after the motion is made. Right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like, how do you have a discussion if you're already
Yeah.
stating all these things? Yeah. I know, it's like, our regulations are 18 years old and this has never been an issue before, but, but,
I mean, I would, personally, I would suggest we, like, make the motion, second it, have whatever discussion is necessary, and then as part of the vote, if it's approved, stating it's approved based on X, Y, and Z, and state these things, you know? Because at
Sure.
that point, we've collectively agreed,
Mhm.
or not.
I don't think anybody's gonna take us to court for this one.
yeah,
Right.
but then, and then, so you make a motion, second, discuss, state these things, and then vote, so you're all kind of voting on that. I guess we could try that for now, and, hopefully we don't, go to court over it.
Well, no, I
No.
was saying,
I
I thought
know.
you said as part of, so we vote, and then we always state that the motion's approved or carries based on the vote, and we would say, for the record, based on the fact that 1, 2, and 4, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd wanna say those things though before you vote.
What if we vote no? What if one person votes no?
Well, so if you state all these things and then someone doesn't agree with those things, then they would vote no, and that would be fine,
Well, you can't say it's
But yeah, we
collective.
can't discuss, alternatives. We're supposed to have a motion on the table before we can discuss all of those things. So you're right, you can't really make a motion saying that they've considered alternatives when we haven't discussed it yet.
well, I guess in theory, we'd be discussing it, before we're making a motion. Normally, we'd talk about, I guess in this one, there really would be no way for there to be an alternative because there's just the one mud bog that you're filling in and there's no other.
It's a public safety and
Right.
liability, so.
Right, it's not like when you're constructing something and you could say, oh, could you construct it further from the wetland?
Right.
This is already there, it's like a pre-existing condition, so it's a little awkward. But yeah, normally I'd say on the record during regular, like, presentations, application and discussion, you would talk about alternatives then. And then this is just to kind of reaffirm, because for this legal case we had, the judge found that all of the justification was in the record for everything, like we had discussed it throughout the course of the public hearing. It was just that we didn't then wrap it all up neatly in a motion, when we approved. But all that talk should just happen anyway, like during the meeting, during the discussion, before we make a motion anyway. Like the motion should just be like the conclusion of all that. So at this point, you know, hopefully by the time we're making a motion, we've already gone through these things in our
As part of
discussion.
the application
Yeah.
and discussion.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave the motion, well, you withdrew,
Well, because we should talk about the fee waiver, I was forgetting about the fee waiver. So if
Yeah.
someone wants to,
Do you wanna make the same motion with the recommendation
then
to waive the fee?
Are we including this then, or no?
I mean, it might be simpler to have two, one to waive the fee and then one to approve, just 'cause
Oh,
it might get kinda
okay.
really complicated otherwise. I'd probably just do, a separate motion first to waive the application fee.
So, for the sake of conversation on that motion, that we don't have yet, it says the waiver, application, under that section, they may petition the commission to waive, reduce, or allow delayed payment of the fee. As it goes on, it states the reasons, which I said A and B, and then it says the commission shall state upon a record of basis for its action. So we have to basically state under
That
which
it's a-
condition we're
That it's a
waiving.
safety issue and,
Yeah, it's a benefit to
benefits.
to public health and safety. I think that,
So A, collectively A would be the,
yeah, I don't know that, so I think the more complicated thing from Carl, like that stating your reason for approval, you have to go through all this, but just for waiving the fee, you just need to state the basis for waiving the fee. So I think on this, you could just state, because it's benefit to public health and safety.
okay, I got you. You don't have to like cite the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so. Is that you?
That's it.
I kept them in for scale.
Your job's just got way more complicated on this
You
commission.
see there's plenty of grass there, it's gonna filter out even at, before it even gets to the
Yeah.
silt fence and the hay bales.
Alright, so we want separate motions of that?
I think it's more
Okay.
sane that way.
So, we'll start with the fee waiver. I'll make a motion to approve a waiver of the application fee for application number 77556 Egypt Road on the basis of, preventing a public health and safety issue or fixing a health and safety issue?
Yeah, maybe resolving.
Resolving a public
Yeah.
health and safety issue.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then, do you have the state fee,
Is that?
the $60 state fee? Or-
Right, I do.
Okay,
So, that's the state fee. I mean, state fee. So that we have, do you have to do another motion now to waive the fee?
we can't waive the state fee. That's
No,
what-
but I mean,
We just did that.
We waived
okay, that was in the
the-
motion,
okay.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I
Believe
was-
it or not, that was.
Yeah, I was talking to him before, cause technically we can't approve without the
Okay.
fee, so he was gonna bring the fee, the
Right,
state
I have-
fee with
I have the fee
Okay. Okay, it's like,
I
it's
think
not
Carl
way too
would be
complicated.
proud if he was sitting here.
You don't need change, do you? Okay. Okay. All right, so if someone wanted to take a stab at sort of reading through,
So, I'll do it again, I don't care. So it's adding, just, will we collectively agree we wanna add these three statements in, right?
yeah,
Well, for two, you would just say, we did not find the activity significant.
Yeah.
yeah, we did not have a public hearing.
Alright, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve application number 77556 Egypt Road, Fort Town Fair, to fill in a previously constructed mud bog within the upland review area.
Based upon the following.
Based upon the following, the commission finds that the applicant has submitted all necessary application materials pursuant to section 211-7 of the wetlands regulations, including but not limited to section 211-7E5, alternatives considered and rejected. The commission did not find the activities to be significant impacts, and lastly, the commission finds that the criteria set forth in section 211-10B have been met by the applicant, and there is substantial evidence in the record to support this finding.
Perfect. Second?
I'll support.
Any other discussion? discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries, you're all set. That was long and painful, but
I know, now, that's the worst part of it, it's normally approving is like the no-brainer. I'm gonna shake you down, I'll have to get your receipt later.
You want me to stop in tomorrow for it?
I'll leave it for Jen. I
Okay.
won't be here, but I'll leave it for Jen.
We're witnesses,
Paper clip it, so
We
you,
all witnessed it.
yes.
I don't have a problem anyway.
Regular witnesses.
I thank the commission very much.
All right, thanks for coming down.
All right.
okay, the good news is the rest is all new business, hopefully no.
Well, there's some we can act on, like jurisdictional things.
Okay, well, we'll try. Modification of application 76211 Tumblebrook Circle. Construction of an in-ground pool in the upland review area. Modification requested to construct retaining wall and utilize additional fill.
So this one is also one we could act on because it's a modification. Just give a little summary of this one where, so you might remember us approving this in-ground pool, last year. And, the property owner had engaged Gardner Peterson, and then we ultimately requested that a soil scientist be engaged, so Rick Zulik was, involved, and that's who's here now, Eric Peterson and Rick Zulik, and, on behalf of the applicant. So we had some plan revisions because there was the wetlands that extended beyond the brook, and, then there were delays and the pool didn't start for a long time, and then finally I heard that they were working on it, and I went out and there was this huge boulder wall. I don't know how long it is, you probably, but,
It's shown here,
but-
but I can measure it.
yeah, that, you see like red and yellow, well, red is where the original silt fence.
I'll
Yeah, okay, you'll describe, okay, good. But anyway, this large boulder wall, when originally it was supposed to just be like a grass slope down to the tree line, instead there was this huge boulder wall and extra fill and everything. So then, this is why we're all here now to resolve it, but I'll let Eric describe it a little more eloquently.
I think you did a great job. Thank you. So I'm Eric Peterson, I'm a professional engineer from Gardner Peterson. Rick Zulik is our certified soil scientist, from Datum Engineering. Sorry. So this is one of those, strange situations that I really don't enjoy being a part of. But, I feel like, the applicant, David Springer, really did what he was supposed to do. Came to the town, he felt out which kind of permits he needed. He hired me, he in turn hired Rick. We got our wetlands permit, we did a delineation, we got a wetlands permit, he got his zoning permits, he got his building permits. We had a nice plan put together, he handed it to his pool contractor, and who knows if he looked at it, I don't know. And so here we are now, certainly not defending that guy's work at all, but we're here to try to find a good resolution. So, as Joanna mentioned, the original plan was to put in a pool pretty much in that same location where it's shown now, and then have a flat area, like a little patio behind it, to just walk around the pool, and then it slopes 3 to 1 down to the existing grade. And that was just gonna be seeded or blanketed or whatnot. And now, to our surprise, there's this 130-foot wall that goes from, one edge of the grass to the other, and it's just such poorly constructed. It's made of these large boulders, and the soil that it's holding up is creeping in between the boulders, so eventually, this guy's patio was not behind the pool yet, but it would just cave in at some point. And this wall is not gonna hold up what it needs to hold up, so he's got building department issues and he's got wetland issues. So we're trying to resolve those with a good idea. Anyway, so, what we're proposing to do, so the applicant has done a great job of coming up with some solutions. He's talked to he's done with that original pool contractor. Unfortunately, he's lost all his money with that guy. He's found a mason that does retaining walls, and he's gonna do a unilock paver wall, which, you know, it's concrete blocks that lock into each other, and you just stack them on top of each other. This is just a brochure of that wall, which is a very simple, it can be engineered if it needs to be. And on the back of it, it just shows like each individual unit and a nice picture of what it looks like. Very simple construction. You know, these are done all the time. You can get them practically anywhere. And so that's the type of wall we're proposing. And on the plan that I have here in front of you, the road is up to the top of the page. You have this house, the driveway comes around to the garage. The pool where it was constructed, the wetlands are highlighted in blue. And then the upland review area, 100 feet, pretty much it comes to the guy's entire backyard. If you can see the yellow, that's where the existing boulder wall is. And our proposal is just to build the red wall, which essentially just is building it in the same place as the current wall. Because what we're trying to do at this point is just do the least amount of work that we can out there. Granted, it's going to result in him buying more wall, but it'll completely reduce the amount of site disturbance that would go forward from today. So by moving a couple of rocks and start building the wall up and then just progressing along, we're not going to be cutting down any more trees. I don't think there's going to be any disturbance closer to the wetlands than what's already been done. So we're just trying to minimize what we're doing going forward. I guess we thought about this already, but on our application we talked about alternatives, which is a big point tonight. There's always the alternative of removing the wall and then just grading it back down to grade like was shown on the original plan. Unfortunately, the pool is higher than it was, so that would extend that slope further towards the wetland. So we feel that to minimize disturbance in the vicinity of the wetlands, putting the wall back in the same place would do that. It'd be a better alternative.
Where will these boulders be going?
Leaving.
They will leave the site?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good question, though.
Did they come from the site or
I do not think so.
Okay.
Because the pool is not that big of a pool, and all these boulders coming out of there would be amazing, to tell the truth.
Yeah.
They brought the boulders in. Yeah. So, so before I go any further, I think Rick has some recommendations, that he'd like to talk about, and, his opinion on the wetlands and whatnot.
Yeah, for the record, Richard Lick, soil scientist. I will read a note that or letter that I've submitted to the commission. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to read it, but it's dated August 10th. And it says, Dear Commissioners, I've conducted a site walk to inspect and view the ongoing pool project located at 11 Tumblebrook Circle in Somers, Connecticut. I've reviewed the permit plan dated 5/21 and revised 5/21/21 and revised 7/28/22. So this is the plan that we've got right here. By Gardner and Peterson Associates, 178 Hartford Turnpike, Taunton, Connecticut. I support the proposed corrective work, and it is my opinion that no substantial additional adverse impact to the abutting wetlands will occur if the following comments are incorporated prior to the start of the wall replacement. There's three. 1, hay bales should surround the white roof leader outlet to prevent concentrated flow prior to the establishment of complete vegetative cover between the wall and the wetlands.
So let's just pause for a second.
Yep.
So, there's a roof leader that goes from the corner of the house by the pool, through the stone wall, and it just stops right at the old hay bale line, which is deteriorated now. So he's recommending hay bale immediately down there.
No, it's fine. Two, a new properly installed silt fence should be installed just down gradient of the proposed wall, which it is shown on the plan, it's a C-plan. Three, all recently deposited debris should be removed by hand in the area between the proposed wall and the wetland flag line. If there are any questions concerning the delineations, please feel free to contact me. So I've been out there a number of times, and actually Eric and I went out there again today. He has removed a lot of the tops and debris that I witnessed about a month and a half ago. There's still stuff in there though. It really, I'd like to see it come out of there. There's one particular tree on the down in there. The tops, the top actually goes down into the brook. I mean, that stuff's got to come out of there. And I really don't want to see them do it with machinery. I'd like to see them do it the old-fashioned way with, cut it up and cart it out by hand, because it's going to be the least amount of disturbance. The hay bales and the silt fence that are there now are pretty much non-existent. There are some sections that it's still up, but it's bad, it's gone. So I think it's really important that before they do anything, they put my number two, put a properly installed silt fence in there to protect the wetlands. I totally support Eric's recommendations. The alternative, I think, is a poor one, because it's going to involve a lot of unnecessary activity pretty close to the wetlands. So Eric did state that the activity's been conducted, it's not going to change, and I agree with that. So I don't think there's a better alternative to get this thing resolved. If you've got any questions regarding the wetlands, there is a small brook back there, surrounded by some ridgeberry soils. I think that was discussed when I did the presentation for the original application. Is this a new application?
This is just to modify, for now, I thought it would be best for them to submit for a modification of the existing permit to include this so that we could resolve it hopefully in one meeting.
Right, yeah, that's what we were looking for.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate your letter and, coming in and one issue too is just limited staff resources, and the way that this project languished for a year and then suddenly was almost done by the time I realized it. So another thought rattling around in my mind is, whether it might make sense for the applicant to retain one of you or someone to sort of oversee, or, because last time we had a condition that I inspect the silt fence before they start, which I did. I went out and the silt fence wasn't towed in at all. It was, the stakes were in and the silt fence was dangling in the breeze, which was hilarious because they knew I was coming to inspect it. And they called me to inspect it, and I went out and I called them back, is this a joke? It's not actually installed. And then I never heard anything back, and then I heard that the project was delayed, blah, 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 and then, so who knows what ultimately happened. And they did have the hay bales, at least, but yeah, it's just one of those things where, I should have known, because the first time I talked to the pool company, they said, oh, we heard you have to inspect the silt fence, where should we put it? And I said, do you have the plan? And they said, what plan? And I said, your property owner paid good money to have plans done, survey, you better build it to that. And that's the thing, we had these specific conversations where I warned them that they better put the pool where it's supposed to go and everything, because they'll have to produce an as-built once it's done, and it better match what was approved. So the fact how this went so wrong is just mind-blowing to me, because we had such conversations about it. But anyway, whatever transpired, but I guess my concern is, you know, hopefully they hire someone better to do the work now, but, but am I gonna be in town on the right day and time to catch if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, or also to make sure that, all the debris you observed has been removed. So I just thought that might be worth having, like, if the property owner could hire Rick or someone of similar qualifications to inspect as well, but.
They do it all the time. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, yeah, everyone could take turns on it. But,
So,
yeah.
can I ask a couple questions? Who's the pool contractor?
Apparently it was Stafford Pool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good
to know. It's a lot of talk, I just had to put a face to the
If
name.
you're looking at a pool, maybe not, steer away from that one.
So, I don't have the application itself in front of me, or the modification, but, kind of feel like the bigger concern here is how to remedy the impacts of erosion that have already occurred. And is the corrective actions related to, you know, the erosion and restoring the wetland and the runoff into the application and on the plans? Or is it?
I did not observe a lot of erosion or sedimentation, certainly anywhere near the wetland. Our concern is that it's gonna happen over time, and it's gonna be a problem in the future.
Okay.
So, even under the patio, we think it's gonna seep out through the wall. It is seeping out through the wall, but it's been stopped by the silt fence. The silt fence has done its job.
Okay, so it's not there.
Yep, and there's very heavy vegetation in there now. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, how it's filled in.
Yes, I mean, I had trouble trying to figure out if the debris had been removed or not, cause there's like 14 feet of vegetation in there now.
So I think that's what threw me off when you said debris. Are you talking about like
Tree
woody
tops.
debris?
Tops, yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant like the washout debris from
No.
the sand and whatnot.
No, it's primarily woody debris.
Okay, gotcha.
I think it was all woody debris.
So that's gonna get physically removed. Is that component written into the application or anything, or is that?
It's written into the letter.
It's in your letter?
Yeah, we do, and I might not have said this in my email, but this is what Rick read into the record. And I have on file, but yeah, I might have not emailed that now that I think of it.
I mean, you could consider them conditions.
Yeah, we could make those conditions of approval.
Right. Okay. And then I guess my only other question is on the new wall that's being proposed, is there any, consideration or built-in drainage to that wall to allow like the natural seepage of water, or is that a concern?
Well, if there is a drain immediately behind the wall to protect the wall, then obviously that would outlet just on the end of the wall. I don't think this talks about that. So, anyway, that's gonna come down to whether it's required by the design of the wall itself, once that's done. So, if there would be a drain behind the wall, you know, obviously you would outlet just right on that side of it, which is still a pretty good significant distance from the wetland itself.
Okay.
Maybe we'll take a boulder and put it like right there, so we'll save one.
We'll save one, yeah.
Not to make light, but, you know, I think that very little water will be coming out of there anyway.
And then ecologically, you know, whatever wildlife inhabits the wetland and upland, do you see the wall as any, I mean, I guess in some ways you don't want, you don't want the wildlife going into the chlorinated pool, but, but do you see any issue with, connectivity or, any issue with amphibians and the wall or anything?
No, I think the wall's a better choice.
Okay,
I really do, because you're leaving everything between the wall and the wetlands natural.
okay, yeah.
Was that stated in the original approval? That everything from once it slopes down, that would just be natural, vegetation?
Yeah, I mean, we had a proposed tree line, which they did infringe upon a little bit, but not terribly, but,
I just wanna be sure that they don't decide to go in there and once this nice wall is put up and then just clear all the vegetation
oh,
out, you know?
well, do you think wetland markers or?
Well, or, I mean, at the least just to state that with this modification,
The
the
existing tree
vegetation
line,
and
be
vegetation
maintained.
will be, yeah.
okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense, not to,
Certainly doable to, I don't think they need to cut down another tree to do anything else.
No, they don't.
So,
No, they don't need to do any of that.
yeah.
And technically, if they were to do anything beyond the wall, they'd have to come to you for a permit, technically.
That's why I thought maybe they just need to be reminded.
So
Might
there
not
were
be a
not,
bad idea.
markers as part of the original?
No, there weren't, we didn't require markers. Usually we've only done that for a new house, but, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, maybe the wall itself is sort of
Don't go past there.
a barrier. It's like, I don't know, hopefully, you never know though, people, what, people surprised.
Based on the vegetation that we saw today, no one's gonna wanna go back there. It's gonna be the wall, he's gonna have a fence on the back of the wall, because you have to for a pool.
Oh, right,
And
yeah.
then it's just gonna be a lot of growth. I mean, there's, like you said, like 12, 14 feet of
Yes,
new growth up there.
Yeah,
And
I mean, they might
for the record, it's my opinion that Mr. Springer's he's a good guy. I mean, I don't think he, ever intended for any of this stuff to happen. I think I think you can trust him, and I think he's well aware of the fact that, nothing can happen back there without a permit. So he's the owner.
And that there are wetlands back there.
And
Right.
there are wetlands back there, yeah.
yeah, and he certainly spent a lot on this pool already and now, yeah.
Going.
Yeah. There might be some regrets in putting a pool in. Okay. But yeah, I think, yeah, the, conditions out of Rick's letter would be,
Want that back?
oh, sure, but, although, are you gonna make the motion? Maybe you
I'm all
want.
motioned out.
And again, was not part of this original application, this is the
That
board.
doesn't
Oh,
matter. You
Where
can
the
still be
what,
part of the modification.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, you know, those three, that,
We can just reference the letter that's on
Yeah,
there.
the
We
three,
don't have to
yeah.
read it all, do we?
yeah, I think that's
Motion.
okay. All right, so yeah, it's one of those, it's not a good situation, we weren't permitting that amount of work in the upland review area, but yeah, now that it's done, is the commission okay with improving what's there and making it a stable situation rather than reopening the whole area?
Why don't you do the motion and then, or just read a proposed motion that someone can say.
Oh, because of our whole,
I mean, seriously, I'll do it if you want me to, I wish this kind
You have it memorized?
No, I don't have it memorized, but
But if we're just modifying it, we're not approving a new application, so do we
Oh, this
have
is
to
a good
go through
question.
the gobbledygook?
Unless your attorney stayed the whole night.
I know. Now we need hand-holding for everything, we never thought we had to worry about approving something, but, yeah, I mean,
I would just have the motion say that considering
So-
alternatives, this is the best.
yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
well, so we're, we're approving the plan, the modification, which is presented on, actually, I don't even know, is that intended to show the new wall?
Yeah,
Or is that
it's,
actually the old plan?
this one's not colored, but yeah, it's got both the old and new. So this is the new wall, is this
Okay.
double, it's outlined in black, and then this is the existing rock wall that's more
Gotcha. Okay.
dashed line. So yeah, and it shows where like the original limit of disturbance was,
So I'm just thinking about Joan's point, which is between the wall and the wetland itself, which is not that big of an area.
mhm,
Either a condition that it remains, naturally vegetated or not be disturbed or something, or the plan be modified to reflect that, I feel like would be a good,
yeah, so.
because otherwise, that's the only buffer between that wall and
Right, yeah, and it's tough because, so we'll usually have, limit of disturbance on the plans, and that's all well and good for construction, but then, once something's constructed and closed out, there's no, I wanted to say there's no way to enforce that, but clearing and disturbance within the upland review area is a regulated activity and would need a permit, but how do you keep someone from doing that? That's why we've been doing the permanent markers when we're concerned about that. Mostly we've been doing that with new houses, but we have done that. We had the other violation on the corner of Turnpike and Rosehaven, and they did install lally columns with markers. Now I don't know if you could epoxy markers onto the wall, the top of the wall, but
this is actually treed area, or is it just grassy vegetation between the wall and the wetland?
Why don't you show them the
but between the
picture?
wetland and the wall is just brush, right? Or yeah.
Show them what it looks like.
vegetated but not treated.
Oh,
Cause this says, I don't know if this is updated, but it says, it says pre-existing tree line and then existing tree line.
yeah, this is now the tree line.
So that's right up against the wall, for the most part. right?
Yeah, so, the pictures I had taken, so there's some small tree, but there is a lot of just, now when you survey and show a tree line, is that based on the canopy, or is that based
Yeah.
on? Okay.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's on the judgment of the guy who knows.
Okay, yeah. That came up recently on one where I saw the as-built and thought, oh no, they cleared way further than they should have, but when I went out, it was one tree had been cut and everything was natural still. I was like, okay, they didn't make it all lawn, but on a different site, but,
So there used to be a
but yeah, it's
non-woody
quite-
area in that same spot. And and then it was a peninsula of trees came out to where the wall is now, they kinda cut that off. And so and that's kinda now overgrown with non-woody stuff, but,
And that's where the debris
That's
came from.
drawing.
that must be where the debris came from.
Yeah, so it is, so this is from, when was this? This was from June 28th, so we've been kinda working to get to this point to bring it before the commission, but, so yeah, there's not, now that's overgrown, I guess, more so than it was, 'cause it was a little bit open when I was there. But, yeah, so I don't know, we could ask that as a condition that that the tree line be permanently marked, if that's
Well, even if it's not marked, just, if it's on the plan that the, part of the plan is to allow it to naturally restore itself as opposed to, down the road it
Yeah.
being brush hogged or
No,
mowed and,
And that's a good point, the plan, so it shows silt fence, hay bale barrier, I guess we could say, we should specify that also be the limit of disturbance,
And we could call for a no-mow area downhill of the wall.
yeah.
yeah, and maybe, would you be able to revise the plans after, just to show that? Okay, yeah, that might be a good,
Because
to-
what I'm
as
thinking
another
is
condition.
when brush and junk starts to grow, they're gonna be sitting at the pool, and then all of a sudden you're gonna have, and nobody's gonna wanna be looking at it, and they are somebody, if it was my property, I would want to have, I wouldn't want it right up to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, if there was I mean, a few feet where they can maintain it or, you know.
That's actually a good point, because you don't want it to start growing into the wall either.
Right,
So if it's like 5 feet from the base of the wall, that way,
and depending on what it is that's
Right.
growing, I mean, I'm just thinking of my backyard, every year we're back there and the stuff just grows.
I do think I see bittersweet in my pictures.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, there's definitely bittersweet in
Yeah,
the pictures I
so
took in
that-
June.
so, you know, they might want a few feet from the wall that they kind of need to maintain, but then we would want it vegetated to the edge of the wetland, just so they're not
Yeah.
clearing everything and dumping it all in the wetlands
Right.
every year.
Yeah, it's one thing to cut bittersweet vines, it's another to like brush hog a whole area. But yeah, the enforcement of that is the
Right.
difficult thing, but we can at least, I guess, make the effort to have the plans and the conditions reflect what should be done, and then we have something a little bit more enforceable anyway, but, that's not a bad idea.
I'll make sure Mr. Spring is aware of it,
Okay,
but we, you know, when he sells.
I know, that's, and
and
that's why we've kind of been doing those permanent, like, markers and, because then the future owners, like, get there and have no idea there's even wetlands on the property, and, yeah. Okay, so now we have a collection of possible conditions, and it's confusing, yeah, so where do you fit conditions into this,
Modification.
yeah,
Again, we're modifying, we're not approving the application, so I would ignore that.
yeah. Okay, that's true, we've already approved this, we're just modifying, so I don't think we need the whole song and dance for this, probably.
But even
Okay.
in the motion to modify, you can just state that you heard, alternative, you know, and this retaining wall seems to be the best option.
Okay, So-
Alternatives were considered
right,
and rejected.
yeah, least impactful alternative. Okay, so, yeah, so we'll need a motion to modify, application 752, well, I guess modify wetland permit 752, 11 Tumblebrook Circle, to construct a retaining wall with additional fill in the upland review area, with the conditions that, hay bales be, well, do we wanna just say the three cons or?
Yes.
With, incorporating as 3 conditions, the 3, enumerated comments in Rick Zulik's letter dated August 10th, 2022, and that the plan be, I'm trying to talk slower because I'm realizing she's trying to take the plan be modified, to establish a no mow area 5 feet off of the wall.
5 feet,
Oh,
could be a little more than that.
more than 5 feet?
5 feet is much. 10.
What do you think? People have,
What's
well-
the distance in,
it's not very, I see it.
I mean, they're gonna revise the plan, so I would just say a no mow area down slope of the retaining wall, and let them decide what.
Okay,
You were saying 5 feet, meaning like starting 5 feet off the wall, right?
oh, yeah, I meant starting 5 feet off the wall, so
Yeah.
we've got, it's like 43 feet well, actually, it depends on where you are, so there's some areas where it's really tight, it's 10 feet, it's only 10 feet from the wall to the wetland in one tight area.
right,
But in most of the area, it's 40-ish feet. But yeah, as you get further into the corner of the property, it gets tighter. But, I don't know.
I just-
8 feet. And right now, from the wall to the existing tree line shown on here is, like 4 feet or so.
Yeah. You were thinking 5 feet is not enough or too much of a space to maintain between the wall and the,
Yeah, I just think if they have a lot of other junk growing just 5 feet from the wall, you might be tempted to wanna clear it. Just for aesthetic purposes.
So what distance do you think from the wall they would need?
What do our experts think?
I mean, 'cause like you said, this one spot here, we only got 10 feet
Right.
to the edge of the
Yeah.
wetland, so.
Were you saying, so I was thinking you just meant we just needed like a mow path, like kind of the width of a mower or something, but you're thinking it needs to be wider?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I've
I
not
think the
seen-
guy's gonna go mow it down, turn around and come back.
Yeah,
So that's,
So you
I don't know how big of a mower the guy has, but, you know,
Well, I think
you say 6 feet or something.
like 5 feet is in that ballpark, right? Like,
yeah,
All right, then, that's fine.
okay. So, alright, where was I? So yeah, it was, to revise the plan to incorporate, and I said it a little wrong, a no mow area beginning 5 feet, 6 feet from the wall, down gradient of the wall, I guess I should say. And, do we wanna say anything about any kind of, having a wetland scientist kind of, inspect
Yeah.
at some point? Because maybe I won't find all the tops that were, and removing of the tops was in here, right, yeah, the
Yes.
removal of debris, okay.
The supervision.
Yeah, that the establishment of silt fence and removal of debris be supervised by a qualified professional. I guess I don't mind if it's, all right, is there anything else we wanted to throw in there? Other than, based on evidence on the record that this is the least impactful alternative at this point. And someone else made that
Yeah,
motion.
who made the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Lisa made the motion.
Of exactly what I just said? All right.
Mhm.
And who seconded?
You want her to read
I'll
it back?
second that.
No, because you can check for minutes for accuracy
Yeah.
anyway. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who was that, Lisa and,
Lisa
Dan.
and
Lisa and Dan? Oh, thanks. Oh man, everything's gonna be painful tonight. We have more fun to go to.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, application 776, 225 Stafford Road, construction of a new house, Martin Green.
All right, so this is the one item that we definitely can't act on tonight. But we can receive it and we can see if we have any questions so that we can, tidy anything up for next month when we can approve it. So this lot actually was in an old subdivision, but was never built. And, there is a pocket wetland on the site. So they were hoping to build a house there and I flagged it that it needed a wetland permit. So here they are before you. So we have Steve Ashelman
Is
here.
that a Rolia subdivision?
Yes,
Good memory.
Well, I remember driving by when it was happening.
Yeah, I don't think it was part of Stone Crossing, but maybe it was
I
right
think it
before
is.
that, or,
I think it is.
oh, maybe it was part of, okay. Oh, right, yes, the.
It's the frontage off of Stafford Road.
Yes.
For the record, I'm Steve Ashel, National Land Surveyor.
Remember?
So like, Joanna said, it's previously part of a subdivision that was approved. It had expired, as it was done back in 2002, by Shreenapp. And the homeowner, or the lot owner wants to build a new home, and single family, and there's a small pocket of wetlands in the back. I believe you didn't have any information, so we actually had our soil scientists flag it last week, I believe. Reflag it. It's actually a little bit larger than what was on the subdivision.
Yeah, it had been flagged by John Ianni, but it was like over 20 years old, so I thought it
Right.
should be looked at again, but, and I guess it did change a little bit, or, you know, also different soil scientists, different
Yeah.
lines, but.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it was a little bit dry out there, but it is, like I said, we did flag a larger area, so it's a little bit more conservative, than it was before. So, the house is not anywhere in the 100-foot upland review area, and I believe we only have probably about, under 10 feet worth of, trench actually in the review area. The only disturbance in the review area would be tree clearing for the purpose of proposed grading back to existing grade.
Yeah,
and
so
to facilitate any drainage along the back of the house.
grading and then part of the septic,
Yeah,
leach
that's
field.
under 10 feet though, if you really look at it, it's about 5 or 6 feet, I think, on the trenches. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's about 15 feet, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, I'm like.
I brought the other, I brought one just in case you wanted to
Oh.
see what the old,
Oh, I gotcha, yeah,
what
yeah,
the
yeah.
old side, if you wanna, I don't know, you guys wanna pass that around, is that something you wanna?
Sure.
That's with the original delineation?
It's got the smaller
Oh,
wetlands,
okay,
just
okay.
for comparison,
Yeah, okay. No, it's interesting to see anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not like dramatically.
No. It's basically the same area,
Oh, I see, that's got both on it.
yes.
The old and the new,
Getting
yeah.
smaller.
Yeah, that's all, yeah.
Yeah,
So.
okay. Yeah,
So
so,
this
yeah.
application was approved previously?
As part of the subdivision.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly this,
Okay.
like on the subdivision plans, they show these cute little square houses that no one actually builds them like that.
Gotcha.
And,
So the
no,
lot
okay.
itself doesn't have its own individual approval previous?
right, it's
Correct.
like within, you know, the 10 years or whatever after the subdivision was approved, if someone had wanted to build a house similar to what was shown on there, I could have signed off on it based on the subdivision approval that Wetlands had, but we've never seen just this one lot. We did see a couple years back, a lot, like 2 lots down or so, that was part of the same subdivision. They came back for a permit, I think in 2016 or something, and that one had 2 small wetland pockets on it. But yeah, it's at this point, you know, an existing lot, and, you know, I will say, you know, the house is probably larger than what was shown on the subdivision plan because they always are, but there is, you know, some effort to stay pretty tight to that 50-foot, setback off the road, and then, the house itself is outside of the upland review area, it's just grading and, you know, some part of the septic, which before approval, we'll hopefully see kind of a clean, approval from the sanitarian. We're kind of working out a process because, she's still, newer on the job and hasn't been doing the same types of reports we're used to seeing from Steve, but, from Steve Jacobs. But yeah, otherwise it, you know, seemed like a reasonable plan. There's not a lot of dramatic grading needed for it. And, you know, this might be one where you wanna see the permanent wetland markers. I'll let you guys decide on that, but.
What kind of a wetland is this pocket.
So we did, I asked for a little more information because we didn't have much from the original, but, so we have a letter from, that just came this afternoon, so I didn't send that out, but, or no, actually it came, I think, Tuesday afternoon, but I didn't see it till this afternoon, from the, soil scientist that delineated it, and he said it was a red maple. He didn't think it would be deep enough to support vernal pool breeding. I guess I should just read the whole thing, but, so I delineated the wetland boundary on August 25th, 2022 by examining the subsurface soil conditions with a Dutch hand auger. This area had previously been delineated by John Ianni in association with the original subdivision approval in 2002. My observations indicated poorly drained soils in the rear of the lot along the northern property line. The soils most closely resemble the Walpole series of soils, which are poorly drained wetland soils. Given the dry season, the soils were not saturated and the water table was not encountered. The vegetation primarily consisted of red maples and deciduous wetland shrubs. Given the good permeable nature of the soils and the shallow nature of the depression, I would not expect this pocket to hold standing water at a depth and duration long enough to be suitable for vernal pool species to breed. If you have any questions, please feel to contact me, and from Mark Friend, who's a soil scientist. So I haven't been able to get out to the site yet, but I can between meetings, in case anything else jumps out at me, but it generally seemed like a pretty reasonable plan, staying as far from the wetland as, you know, is reasonable, considering.
There's quite a bit in the wetlands now. All right, well, if there aren't any major concerns, this will be a quick one, and you can go.
Yeah, anybody have questions for Steve on this? If anything jumps out at you in between, you can reach out to me and I can pass along any questions, but.
All set?
I think so.
Can we vote?
No.
It's a small pocket, we can vote tonight, right?
Right. Carl, the town attorney's not here, so.
Just don't tell the state.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for
Have a good
coming in.
night.
Sorry for the wait.
Okay,
Alright.
jurisdictional ruling, application 777, 520 Hall Hill Road, construction of tobacco barn within the upland review area, John Mark Tobacco.
All right, so we recently had, the same applicant before us to build 6 tobacco barns, and now we need one more, right?
More for the fall, yeah.
So we're looking to do one more barn, that is within the upland review area. It's kind of similar, you know, it's in the upland review area of that little water course, So you'll see barn 7 all the way to the right is, the one, this way.
That's all right.
Take it out. Oh, look it, very prepared. Alright.
Individual pieces.
Thank you, sir.
Pizza? You're gonna make us hungry, huh? You can't mention pizza unless you have it.
It's a little small, but you can, you all have better eyes than I do, so I'm sure you can read it.
Thanks.
Please have the big one.
So, for the record, J.R. J.R. Russo, Owen Charmakino, Dad Steve is over there. And, Joanna pretty much already explained it, this is barn 7. You saw 6, I think, in the first application. This one is just east of the last one that was built. The southerly end of the barn, right here, is within the regulated area, as was, barn 6. There's about small amount of square footage, which I sent to you.
Oh, yeah, was it 1,400, or?
1,400 or 400 maybe, I don't remember exactly.
It's 1,400.
Yeah, I think it's 1,400.
1,400 square feet of the building, and the end of the building is between 50 to 60 feet from the actual ditch, the wetland ditch that's located to the south of it, so, there's a fair amount of space actually between the actual ditch and the building. Yeah, it was 1,400 square feet. So, it's very similar to 7 in terms of the way, or number 6 in terms of the way it lays out. They're the same distance apart, there's access all the way around the barn and stores on either end. Again, similar to number 6, and it'll function pretty much the same way as number 6. The ditch was delineated by Rick Zulik. At this point, further to the east where this is, it's strictly the center line of the ditch. It's fairly narrow. It does convey some storm water during storm events, and surprisingly, I just actually asked Owen tonight, I said, after all the rain we had, is there any water in it? And there isn't, it's dry. Of course, it was so dry in July and August, I don't know how much more rain it's gonna take before we actually see some groundwater, but there's nothing there now.
Wow, yeah.
And it's very, Joanna was out there, it's very sandy and gravelly once you get out of this little wetland area up into the uplands. Surprisingly, it's very well drained, probably
Well, then
excessively
that
drained
water course
soil.
disappears and
It
just.
does, it flows down and comes down from Hull Hill Road, and then it just disappears into the ground, and it's gone,
Yeah.
because it's all sand and gravel, so. This is essentially almost a carbon copy of Barn 6, number 7. And I'm guessing that'll probably be the last one, at least in this location. I don't think we'd go any further east, because the farm road gets in our way. So this actually almost touches the farm road on the north end, and allows them to get in and out of it with the tractors and get the tobacco in and come back out. So any questions, Owen would be happy to answer.
Yeah, and this is for a jurisdictional ruling as an agricultural use as of right, since it's a building directly related to the farming activity and it's not involving clearing or filling in a wetland, it's just in the upland review area.
So that was gonna be one of my questions, is there any more clearing proposed? I see we're getting kinda close to that wood line, but,
It's all clear.
okay, no clearing.
The photograph here is
It's an old one,
Yeah.
for 2019, I think, so all the clearing has been done. Essentially, it's
Where the barns go, I
where
think
the barns are now is fully cleared. There's no vegetation there at all, and it's relatively flat, so there really isn't any grading required. It's a pretty flat field.
Yeah.
We have to harvest the pumpkins where the barn is first before we start to build.
Okay.
Pumpkins, huh?
That
Same
time.
here.
Almost fall.
Okay, a motion to determine that it's a jurisdictional ruling.
At least for jurisdictional ruling, we don't have to go through the whole approval
We think.
language. Cause we're just deciding if you have jurisdiction or not, and if you don't have jurisdiction, then it's simple.
I'll make a motion to approve or
State the exact.
jurisdictional ruling for the application 777, 520 Hall Hill Road. Construction of tobacco barn within upland review area, Dharma Tobacco LLC, as a use of right.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine, I guess just maybe instead of approve, just like, you find that it's a
It's a
use as of right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. We find jurisdictional ruling application 77 as a use of right. Instead of approving.
Yeah,
To
that
determine.
the commission finds that, that, you know, blah, 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 this activity is a use as of right. I forget exactly what you said.
Use of right, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, no other questions or discussion? All those in favor? And our apologies that you had to wait so long for us to do this, but you kind of see what fun this has been this evening.
Was that Lisa and Dan, or?
I made the motion, she
Oh, Sydney
seconded.
seconded, okay.
Okay, now, is somebody here for number 5?
Yes, so we can,
Okay, I'd like to amend.
originally I put the discussion, cause I didn't, it had to do with the germ locks, the withdrawal of water.
Most of it they're gonna say no.
I don't know. Are you wanting to talk about the withdrawal thing, or?
We can, before we come back.
We were gonna like discuss it, but then I think we're feeling bad that, Mr. Duke has been sitting here this long, cause that discussion might be a little longer, but I mean, I could give him a general discussion of what the commission, or what Duke said to me and all that after.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to, it's up to you if you wanna stick around or not, but.
They waited in line, it's their turn, so.
So which do you want to do?
It gets a little complex. Deep thoughts, which I don't know if I have anymore, but. What do you wanna do? I don't know. They're all being gentlemen, so.
All right, well,
Whatever
then
you want.
we'll stick to the agenda.
Okay.
So, there was an issue, some concern about a pond disappearing,
Yeah.
and whether it was our jurisdiction or deep.
Yeah, there were neighbor concerns about, Lafayette Pond this year being, used for irrigation, and, that the water level had dropped significantly. We also were in a severe drought,
And there is a limit to what is supposed to be withdrawn without a
Yeah.
permit and.
It's one of those items in our regulations that state that the state of Connecticut, regulates withdrawals of water. Let me get to that part.
If it's over a certain amount.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hairy thing, 'cause oh my God, I'm like, never gonna find anything in here again. Activities regulated by the state, and it lists diversion of water, including withdrawals of surface or groundwater in excess of 50,000 gallons per day. So it doesn't say limited to, so I think our interpretation has always been that the state regulates withdrawals, not the town. But now, after a long conversation with Deep, because when a neighbor reached out to Deep with these concerns, Deep told the neighbor to reach out to the town, but the town had already told them, we don't regulate withdrawal. So I ended up having like an hour and a half conversation with Darcy Winter from, Deep Wetlands Division, to talk about it. So, at another time, we could talk about how each item in this list of activities regulated by the state is different, because there's like all sorts of nuances, and like, some items Deep has exclusive authority over, and some items aren't exclusive authority, and the town can also regulate. So it's not as clear cut as this would lead you to believe. And we've always gone, oh, the state regulates it, so we're gonna leave it alone, because, for example, you know, the pesticide issue, is something, you know, that the state has people with expertise in those areas. The town really doesn't, so we've deferred that generally to the state. But turns out we could also regulate, use of, aquatic pesticides, which I don't know that we wanna get into that, but, and there's other things where dams are exclusive authority of Deep, so we don't regulate that. But, so this makes it seem like they're all the same kind of thing, and really there's all these nuances. So we had a long conversation about all of them, but to cut to the chase about the, withdrawals, it turns out to be something that both Deep and the town can regulate. If they're withdrawing more than 50,000 gallons a day, Deep requires a permit. Otherwise, Deep doesn't require a permit. So then the question is, if Deep's not gonna require a permit, should the town require a permit? It's a tough thing, because if you're considering whether to, approve or deny what kind of evidence are you gonna have? You'd wanna have data to show that you're not going to negatively impact that water course that they're withdrawing from. You'd have to also, if, let's say something happened and a pond dried up, could you actually prove that it was caused from the withdrawal? It's kind of a whole messy subject.
And how do you measure?
Right, and I mean, and I think, you know, there's different techniques for measuring. I think in this case, the equipment wasn't allowing it, but, there are gauges you can use, that sort of thing. In this case, it becomes sort of a moot point because, we're told that, in this specific case that came up, that prompted this discussion, that, they are gonna go to deep out of an abundance of caution. They don't think they're withdrawing 50,000 gallons a day, but just to be very, open, honest, and appease everyone, that they're gonna apply for the diversion permit from deep. But that doesn't mean we can't also regulate it, although in this case, it's an agricultural use. So my interpretation would be that this is an existing pond, an existing farm field, which I look back to the 1934 aerials, and it's the exact configuration of field and pond, and the pond is fully within the property. Conceivably, the pond was dug to use as irrigation for these fields.
Who other than someone doing agriculture would be pulling more than 50,000 gallons of water a day out of a
Sometimes,
pond?
like, pool contractors do, and they go withdraw
Road
water.
construction does too.
Yeah,
Does it?
Golf courses.
yeah.
Does that fall into agriculture, 'cause it's
Oh, golf.
grass?
No, I would fight that. But this, in this case, you know, any way I looked at it, 'cause that's why at first I was like angry that that Deep sent this kind of response to the property owner, 'cause I went, no, it's agricultural, clearly, but is it something where we should have a jurisdictional ruling? This is where I have a problem, because if it's a farm that's existed in this way forever, we don't have a jurisdictional ruling every time a farm goes to like plow their fields again. We only would have a jurisdictional ruling for a new activity. So I don't know, is the withdrawal this year more than normal? How do we know that? It's, you know, what's gonna trigger the need for that ruling is the problem I have, because if they're not clearing a new field, or they're not having a totally new operation, like we did have a ruling for the dramatic change that happened on Four Bridges Road when Grower Direct took over that property and put in all the greenhouses. We needed jurisdictional rulings for that, but in this kind of case where it's nothing substantial happening, like in terms of the land, it's just withdrawing from a farm pond, and you know, what's gonna trigger, are we gonna every time someone wants to withdraw water, like have a jurisdictional ruling? But, you know, it could be worth having something on file that we had a jurisdictional ruling, cause this has been used so long, we've never had a ruling on it. So maybe it's good to have it, I don't know, it's something.
At a level of comfort, we're more than willing to apply it.
Right, yeah, they're,
Check the box.
yeah, they're willing to apply for it. I just worry about, yeah, what's gonna trigger it in the future for others, you know, if it's an existing farm, are we gonna make everyone come in for a jurisdictional ruling?
Is that something that we can consider revisions to in our amendments to the town government regulations, where we kind of spell out those scenarios? And, cause honestly, like, from hearing what you're saying, like, if they were over 50,000 gallons per day and they were triggering the state permit, I would say, like, we shouldn't even get involved.
Right, why should we get involved, yeah.
So, like, if we could build that into our regulations, that it, and then if it's not, if it's under 50, but it's, you know, considered an exempt activity, if it's for farming or whatever, then we could have some other provisions where it's exempt and they don't even need a jurisdictional ruling. But then, if you have like pool water companies or people that are doing it for other like commercial businesses,
Yeah.
not farming, then maybe that's where we would wanna see those applications and weigh in on, you know, cause I'm assuming like this Lafayette pond thing, I mean, this must have been going on for decades, right? Like they pull from that
Probably
pond every year.
centuries, or, yeah, I don't know, or probably at least.
Doesn't the fire department draw water from
They're
ponds?
specifically exempt, or they have, or at least for the, the dry well installation, I have to look whether the withdrawal itself is listed as exempt, but yeah, there is some language for that, for,
For the fire department.
yeah, yeah, it's something, yeah, and I wouldn't recommend, well, you know, there's all these activities regulated by the state, and I wouldn't recommend getting into the whole issue of aquatic pesticides, for one, where the state regulates that, and what more expertise are we gonna bring to that issue? And even in talking with Darcy, she said, you know, we could add kind of conditions, but we could not regulate the type of chemical and how it's applied. That's the exclusive authority of DEEP. So, you know, we could get into some of it, but not other parts, and it just seems like if DEEP is already regulating something, why should we? But then, yeah, when it comes to withdrawals, if it's not triggering the diversion permit from DEEP because it's under 50,000 gallons a day, then there's that gray area where we could regulate it.
I
And,
think
yeah.
farm and agricultural should be exempt.
Right, yeah. Unless for some reason you're truly, truly like altering the wetland in some way, which I guess you could argue, is it like completely dried up or something like
Right.
that? Otherwise, you know, I can't see how you'd require a permit for like irrigating for like an actual farming activity.
Is pulling out of a pond different than pulling out of a river or stream?
Well, so this is technically, it's like an in-stream pond, it's like a dammed section of the stream.
So, for just this specific one we hired, Bruce has done work with other, consultants have done work, and what they found is that I think there's only, the flow from the stream in is minimal, like 5,000 gallons a day. The pond is primarily groundwater fed.
Okay. Oh, interesting,
That's
okay.
part of the process for the deep application.
Okay, oh, that's interesting.
We have applied, we'll be on this our fourth or fifth water diversion permit this year, and DEEP, you know, has been pretty good to work with, and we received them for everywhere we've applied for, so.
Okay.
It's all groundwater fed.
And I mean, I suspect this is really coming up this year because of the drought and,
Yeah, we've irrigated there before in the past, and have had the same problem in the past with the neighbors, so we called the state police, and
oh, really? Okay. Have you been, how many years have you been leasing there?
oh god,
It's
a
been,
long time.
okay, it's been a long time. Yeah, it's not like you're a new activity, 'cause
No,
I could see that triggering maybe a jurisdictional ruling if like
no.
there's a new
There is
farm and,
we lease it from the landowner, and some of, I think, the abutters don't see eye to eye with the landowner, where he owns the entirety of the pond, and then about 30 or 40 feet from the edge of the water into their backyard, and they maintain from their, you know, the entirety up to the pond line. There's some discussion on that.
Oh.
And so we're almost just kind of stuck in the middle here of, other issues that don't pertain to actual, them caring about the water in the pond.
okay. Yeah, I mean, and I could see it being a useful thing, a process, like if you've got someone new purchasing or leasing farmland to kinda have them at least come in and sort of explain what they're gonna be doing on the land, and, you know, you could have a ruling on whatever they're wanting to do, just to have something on file that we had a jurisdictional determination for it. But yeah, it's like something like this, at what point, if they've been doing this for however many years, do you say, oh, we should really have
Yeah.
a jurisdictional ruling for it?
I think the other thing is just like to understand how they're determining whether they're above or below the 50,000 gallon threshold.
Yeah.
You know, on new ones, like if they come in and say, you know, this is, we're doing it based on pump capacity or,
So to answer that question, the recommendation of DEEP, we have spent thousands and thousands of dollars to order water meters for every one of our pumps now.
Okay.
So we'll have, you know, we'll know exactly if you're over that threshold or not.
So for Lafayette Pond, is that like 1 meter for that withdrawal as a whole, or do you have like multiple meters?
No, I have 15 irrigation pumps, so I have to, and you know, we'll run 15. One for that pond. Maybe one for that pond.
Oh, one per pond.
There's only one
Just-
pump there,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
When we're irrigating, there's just one pump there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed like there's kind of this critical timeframe where you really need to.
Yeah, right, to be clear, we irrigated out of there for 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah, or you risk losing your entire crop
Yeah,
at that point, yeah.
It's definitely dry summer.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly farming is exempt. I could see the argument, like originally I never thought of withdrawals really being a regulated activity under our regulations. I could see where it's not agricultural, technically you are removing material from a wetland or water course, being the water itself, but it's not something I've ever like thought of that way, especially 'cause deep regulates withdrawals, but
Doesn't it go back into the ground?
huh?
It goes back into the ground?
Right, yeah, they're watering and it should percolate back.
It should find its way back down.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
but not with evaporation,
Yeah, yeah,
dry conditions.
that's true, yeah, some will evaporate in this hot, dry summer, but yeah, versus like if you're put it in pools or wherever else, yeah.
So if we wanted to clarify, local, is that something we'd have to do through a modification of the regulations,
I don't
or that's
think
just
we'd,
like?
I don't think we'd have to, it's something, we've just kind of always interpreted it as we can ignore everything that the state regulates.
Yeah,
And looking at it, it doesn't say that, it says activities regulated by the state, and it actually does say, in addition to any permit or approval required by the commission, the commissioner of environmental protection shall regulate activities, you know, subject to the following jurisdiction. So it's worded in such that we can regulate these things as well.
yeah.
We just have always said, well, DEEP has the expertise, and, you know, do we really wanna be regulating these things, or do we wanna kinda defer them to DEEP? And talking with DEEP, it seemed like kind of an option either way, I think what else she said, but, yeah, and if you were gonna deny, you would need like expert, testimony saying that this withdrawal is going to negatively impact the wetland or water course. So you'd have to have like, you know, a lot going on there, but, what else did she say? Oh, we also talked about non-consumptive diversion, because DEEP also has non-consumptive diversion permits for like in-stream work and like dewatering and that sort of thing. That's a whole other issue, but, I was looking to see if there's something else. I know, it's one of those things, but yeah, I think our regs in this case are still all right, it's just, I guess for consistency, how do we wanna approach these things? 'Cause when this all came up and neighbors were contacting me, my response to them was, this isn't something we regulate within the town, it's really DEEP that regulates it, and I couldn't see citing any kind of violation, 'cause it's not something we've ever done before, so I thought it was outside of my authority to do any enforcement when it's something we've always deferred to DEEP on. So more so I wanted to clarify how we wanna treat these going forward. You know, in a case like this, I think we have an argument for, it's clear, it's an irrigation pond, it's being used for irrigation, so that's exempt anyway. Whether we wanna have them actually apply for a ruling, I might argue that it only makes sense to have them apply for a ruling if it's like a new activity.
I would agree.
But, 'cause otherwise
Right.
it's just gonna be an obnoxious process for farmers, like.
Right, I think pre-existing uses should be kinda exempt or
Yeah.
grandfathered in to some extent, and like you said, if somebody's digging a new irrigation pond and wants to, you know, propose using that, then we could just do it that way.
And even if, like, if someone doesn't apply for a ruling and, or if we deem something exempt, but then something negative occurs, like the pond does completely dry up, or erosion occurs that fills in a wetland, then that's still a violation, like, the activity's exempt, but then the fact that like a wetland was altered is not exempt. So we can still have enforcement on that even though the activity initially we ruled exempt or didn't think needed a ruling, if some adverse impact occurs, there's still that enforcement ability. So if like the pond had completely dried up and amphibians were whatever, anyways, then there's still like an avenue there for enforcement, but
From the state or from, local?
for the town, yeah, 'cause that's what Darcy was saying, that that just because
Some
an
of these ponds dry up on their own, like you said,
I
naturally,
know.
so
Well, that's the
it's
thing, then
like
you'd have to like be able to prove that the diversion actually caused that or something. I think the better example would be, like if you said this forestry operation was exempt, but then it resulted in all this erosion
Oh, yeah,
going into a
yeah.
brook, then you could say, all right, well, your activity was exempt, but you've now impacted a water course, so now you have a violation. So just because it's exempt doesn't mean you can't still do enforcement, if something goes awry. But yeah, so actually, so I did have a note, if a pond or stream dries up, possibly enforceable if you have sufficient evidence that the withdrawal caused it. So in this case with the drought, it's like, how do you parse that out? You'd need all kinds of experts to model whatever based on all sorts of factors, so yeah, for private property, you know, it is possible that both DEEP and the Town Conservation Commission can regulate if we want. She also pointed out that enforcement is a may thing and not a shall, so we don't have to enforce everything if we don't want to, which was kind of interesting, but yeah. So anyway, in this case, I think it's kind of a moot point, but I put it on after the Jarmock's like jurisdictional ruling, just because if they, it's helpful to hear kind of their side of things when it comes to this. And I never issued any kind of violation or even reached out to them initially. I talked to various people at DEEP to try to see, like, you know, is there anything here really? And I think it's great that they're, you know, going for the diversion permit, and I think it would be sane for us to say, if someone's got a diversion permit, we shouldn't bother double regulating it, because what are we bringing to the scenario? But yeah, the question is, I guess for those under 50,000 gallons, if the state's not regulating it, do we wanna require either a permit or a jurisdictional ruling for those? And I just for consistency, so that when this comes up, if I know what you all want me to do. But
I
in
would
this case, I
say
didn't
new withdrawals only, and it would
Yeah.
still depend on the type of withdrawal.
Like if someone sees, a pool company or whatever, we'll just keep beating on pool companies because they were problematic tonight for us, but, then, you know, if someone's withdrawing, it's not for agricultural use or an existing agricultural use, and someone contacts the town, or if someone from the town observes it, then maybe we do say, hey, you require a permit for this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also a good way to see, hey, should they really have a DEEP permit? And if not, maybe we require a permit. I just don't know what that approval process will look like, because we've never had that before. Usually we're talking about alteration to land or, yeah.
One time, this was years ago, that it happened in the Scannick River, and the farmers, you know, were all pumping out for their crops, and they were trying to, you know, limit them, and that would be all right, but it was having a problem with some hand, and they were using it, so. So how can you prove it, you know, and that, they were trying to blame the farmers for doing it, you know? But they were higher up on it, and they were pumping it like crazy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I don't know,
It's
like,
pretty hard
if
to,
we're gonna regulate this, like what kind of experts we would need, cause I don't have the expertise certainly, and then, how would we even go about regulating?
We can just hope we avoid it and we
I
don't
know.
face it again.
But But in this case, are we is the consensus sort of that they don't need a jurisdictional ruling for their irrigation using the existing?
No,
Okay, okay.
I think they're being overseen by the state.
Yeah. Yeah, especially now that they're going for the diversion permit, I don't see any reason at this point, but,
If it's agriculture, leave them alone.
But I agree
The way I
that
feel.
even if they weren't applying for the diversion permit from the state, everything that we've talked about, it's been the common practice, it's for agriculture, the pond didn't disappear, that we would just not wanna get involved in it.
right. Yeah, this was one, anyway, I looked at it, I didn't see how we would really have any jurisdiction anyway. But then it begged the question of, what about when it's not agricultural, or
Right.
when it's a new agricultural?
Yeah, I think that's different, but if
Yeah.
it's, dug, I think this one was dug with the intent of being irrigation,
That's
right?
all I can imagine, since it was,
It's a man-made feature to begin with, it's being used for its original purpose, so.
right, yeah, I can only imagine it's been used like that for a century or more, but, okay. So I think you're off the hook for us for this one, you can just deal with Deep's.
Easy, they're nice. Yeah.
More expensive though.
I know, they're more.
It's, I think it's $7,500 for a permit.
Ooh.
Wow.
Doug Hopkins almost retired but decided not to.
Oh, yeah? Sticking it out one
He's got kids entering college, he's like, maybe.
You gotta sell a lot of tobacco for that.
Yeah. Waiting another barn.
And pumpkins.
Yeah.
Okay, should we?
I appreciate you.
No, thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
Are you gonna give me no? Oh, yeah, we don't wanna leave, you feel bad.
Oh, that's okay. 732 Hall Hill Road, filling man-made ponds, Hillsdale College.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Do you need
just wanna-
copies? Okay.
So, just a little intro, this was prompted by a resident contacting me, concerned that, well, they actually said 2 ponds, but I'm guessing it's based on the, oblong shape of this pond maybe. That a pond was being filled in on, one of the Hillsdale properties, and, so I, contacted, Mr. Duke here, and, we had a, open conversation. He's new to Connecticut, and, we talked about the regulations, and it was something overlooked. But then we also kinda got into more the weeds on how this pond originated and all of that, which is a little bit complex, and, so anyway, we're here before you. I did send a notice of violation for filling in the pond. It is a man-made pond. There is evidence of a prior pond in that vicinity that was altered by 2012, by 2016, before Hillsdale owned the property. And I can show, I have a series of aerials from 2009, 2012, 2016, 2019, I can pass around, but just to kind of show, what was there, and then how it progressed, and then I just have a picture taken today of the current situation, where basically when the pond was created, the material that was dug out to create the pond was used as a berm around the pond, and then that same material has now been pushed in to fill the pond. But I'll allow you to give your spin on things as well. I'll just gather a little grouping of these to send around, but is there anything you wanted to add to?
Yeah, sure. So we were motivated to deal with this site based on a couple of factors. It posed a security risk, so a safety risk. There are high sides on the berm. There's a man-made dock that went out, about a 15 to 20 foot drop to nothing, which seems like a potential liability in terms of safety. And also, whatever liquid could be held in there, which would quickly dissipate, was growing mosquitoes after rains, after snow melts. It had been the practice of the Blake family to pump water into it, but it would not hold water. So a rubber liner had been put in to try to fix that problem. That did not remedy the situation. So it was our call that the plastic liner in place and the nuisance, and also a nuisance in terms of, trapping wildlife. So the sides were high enough that, young deer got trapped in there, died in there because it couldn't get its way out. But then, during the winter, things get slick on the sides. Actually, as it turns out, since we're rabbit trailing this late at night anyways, turns out Mr. Blake actually fell down into this very same
Oh,
pond and
really?
had to crawl his way out at 102
Oh my goodness.
and was cut up and bleeding as he got up the side. So all of that to say is we were motivated on a number of fronts. So that's why we went ahead with this project.
Do you know why they did that in the first place?
He, my understanding is that he wanted it as a landscaping pond.
Oh,
Just something to be pretty, but
How big was it?
I have on the drawings here. I'm a bad judge here, but 50 to 75 feet long, maybe 30 feet wide. Maybe a little
Yeah,
longer than that.
In inches, I didn't really print the full size, but, it's supposed to be an inch and 75, but it doesn't look like that's right. I don't know if any of these printed to.
Hard to say because, again, it was not holding water unless it was after a rain, so you'd have to kind of eyeball the size of the berm and imagine.
Yeah, 'cause if
yeah.
they put a liner in there, you would think they want a pool. That's an awful big pool.
Yeah, it does look like it's probably like at least 300 feet long. It's,
It seems big to
But-
mine.
Yeah.
but, so there's like, Joan's sending around, they're like, the 2009 through 2019, I wrote the date, like, I think on the bottom of them. And I have a couple here that I just threw on the contour lines so that you could see the thing that jumped out at me was, now this is back before 2016, when this pond was constructed, there had been what looks like a pond,
This is,
like,
12.
right next to it. So probably it was a wetland violation back in 2015 or whatever, sometime between 2012 and 2016 when this was dug, because I had one with the pond, but in 2009, you can see what I think was a little pond right next to this large pond that I'm guessing now was like filled in with, but,
Oh, really?
well, because you don't see this once the
Yeah.
pond's built.
Yeah,
I didn't mean was filled in now, I meant was probably filled in before 2016, but,
yeah.
this is like where the pond until recently was, and then this is what it looks like, a little pond there. So, right now, like, they're more than 100 feet from the large existing ponds and the, brook elsewhere on the property. We don't have a full delineation of the property, but, because that question had come up whether, if this was a lined pond, was it a water course, and, was it in the upland review area otherwise? Oh, yeah. Is this just that one? Okay. So, and I don't know, in the 2012 aerial where the pond might have been newly constructed, I'm not sure, it doesn't look to be lined, but maybe at some point a liner had been added to try to hold water better. I never observed the liner, so, myself, but yeah, that was 2012.
I included with my packet, a letter from our excavation company, who was the company that originally dug it out. We hired the same firm to, push it in, and they speak to the rubber liner.
Oh, okay, thanks. And, alright, so here's the 2009 through 2019, but,
Little Skinner juice.
and Mr. Blake didn't tend to be one to, seek permits for work in and around wetlands in the past, so it seems he, dug this pond. I don't know if the pond that I perceived from 2009, was natural or not, or if that was the start of a thing, and who knows, but, 'cause it was hard to see in prior aerials that don't have good resolution, or summer aerials.
This photo?
Yeah, that one's, oh, is that 2012? Yeah,
No.
that's just, it's the same thing though, oh, okay, yeah, so I see it in 2009, 2012, and then 2016, suddenly there's this new pond.
So, but in terms of pre-existing, you're talking about this feature?
Yeah,
I just can't tell if that's like evergreen trees versus water.
right, it's not, conclusive, like 100%, I just thought it looked like it, there
Right,
might have
yeah,
been a
yeah.
pond there, but, yeah.
No, see, I wasn't here then, but the excavation company, I asked them about that, they said, no, we dug out the pond, and that's why I hired the same company, because I wanted them to return it to the way it
Yeah.
was.
So I couldn't say 100%, but although in this one,
That's the one that I think it looks more like
yeah.
tree drains, wouldn't you say?
Well, or is that like a tree overhanging a pond? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's hard to say. So, I don't know. So in any respect, I guess at this point we had this pond constructed sometime between 2012 and 2016, and, it's since been filled in. Maybe it's something you would have permitted anyway, maybe it's not something you would have permitted. It's tougher after the fact to then assess what the value of it was or anything like that. At this point, it is filled in.
Did you say there was no permit when it was dug up?
Right, yeah, and I don't know for sure if that was, within 100 feet of a wetland. To me, it looks like there was a small pond right next to where the new pond was, but, I'm saying new pond, but now it's not there anymore. But, this is, so, maybe if there was no pond right next to it, maybe it wasn't even a regulated activity when Blake dug the pond, but, cause if there's no wetlands around, there's not really anything keeping you from digging a pond. But it's one of those things when someone's got an excavator and all that, it'd be good to know if there's wetlands around, and I'm sure he just sort of would have done.
Okay,
What do you
so
wanna do?
I have a
We kind of
question.
kicked it off down.
Why
Oh, that.
is filling in of a man-made pond without a permit a violation if there was never a permit issued in the first place?
Well, 'cause once
Because
there's a
it's still
wetland.
there, and it's,
What?
it's still a water body once it's there, whether it was
Yeah, but
made or not
it didn't hold
made.
water, so it's not a water body.
Well, the picture showed it's got water in it.
So in 2019 aerials, it does
Yeah,
have
that's
water in it, but then,
But it never
I don't know if you want me
stayed.
to call you
But-
Laban or Mr.
You
D.
whatever suits you.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, maybe we would've permitted it, it would've been like a gigantic swimming pool if it was lined, and maybe we would've permitted it, but.
Right, I would've gone out and looked, and if it was, I know, like, for instance, very close to this, where the Monticello is, the Moore property had a lined pond in front, and that was, removed and filled. It had a permit to do so.
A permit to fill it?
Although,
Or to construct it?
to fill it, although I think, and that was before my time, I think it was also tied into the fact that the, like, brook went by there, or the little water course went by there too, so I don't actually know if it was permitted because of it being a pond, or because it was in the upland review area of the brook, but I believe that was a lined pond that the Demores had in front of where the Monticello is now, but,
Yeah, the chapel that was there.
yeah. And, but yeah, when Blake had purchased that property, there was, you know, it was such a huge project, there was wetland permitting and all that for that project, but, yeah, oh yeah, I was starting to say in 2019, there is water in the pond, but in speaking with Mr. Duke, the pond was sort of fed by pumping,
Yeah. So they would pump water into it, combine that with rainfall and try to get it to hold water. So there was always an attempt to get it to hold, it just never succeeded.
Were they pumping water from that
A
other
well,
pond?
they dug out a well
Okay.
so it's not spring fed, they were pumping water into it.
Didn't we have a guy come in here that's, renting some land back there, and, he got it dug out, that's not near this?
yeah, that was like further back by, like where the brook cuts through the back, it kinda separates this property almost from the farmland behind it, but,
That's the
That's
same.
where John Burney draws water.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
they use
that
it,
was
he's still doing that.
they use it for their,
I think that was
vegetables they
like-
run.
Did we like process that as a jurisdictional ruling, or we didn't even like act on it? I don't remember.
That was one that probably should have been a bigger deal than we made it to be, but,
Yeah.
cause they were dredging like
It was another ass to the
in
facts.
yeah, I think we decided it was less than 3 acres, impacted, so that it was jurisdictional exempt, cause it was for farming, but, you know, it could have probably risen to something bigger than, we kinda let them off pretty easy, but, yeah, so anyway, in this case,
So what do we do?
huh?
So what do we do?
So the main issue is we don't have the benefit of being able to look at it ahead of time and determine what kind of function or value it might have, you know, if it was just this fully lined pond, you know, maybe it wasn't serving much purpose, maybe it was allowing amphibian breeding, maybe it almost served as like a seasonal, almost like a vernal pool, 'cause those can be artificial too, but, so we don't really know at this point what was potentially lost from that pond. Maybe they would have come in for a permit and we would have looked at it and said, oh, it's this lined pond that they're pumping water into it. You know, we don't care if you fill it in. One thought that I had, when we met out there today was, possibly, you know, something, to improve the ecological benefit of the surrounding wetlands, like there's a lot of manicured ponds with grass right up to them, maybe improving water quality in those ponds or wildlife, usage around those ponds might be a way to offset what might have been I mean, we don't know what was lost in this case, so I'm kind of just throwing thoughts out there,
Well,
but.
if it's helpful, we, you know, obviously I'm new to Connecticut, but I'm not new to wetland regulations, the last place I worked for, we had property abutting a private lake that was one of the cleanest in Wisconsin, I'm pretty proud of that. But I do tend to rely on, I mean, not passing the buck here, but I do tend to rely on contractors to know when we've gotten close to tripping that wire. So, for example, the parking lot that we put in behind Monticello, that has a full-scale retainment system that prevents runoff into the brook that runs behind it. So, just tossing that out there, that we're not looking to break any rules or ask for forgiveness instead of permission. It's just one of those that we didn't realize that we needed a permit in this case, but now
Well, and
we're more aware of that.
The other thing, kind of going back to the Fort Town Fair, where they're filling the bog because it was a safety issue.
This is a
Right.
safety issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be, in that case, it wasn't a wetland per se, although maybe in the 2 or 3 years since it was constructed, maybe they did create a water course, but, I could see it being a similar thing. We did require a permit for that, so in this case, you know, since I sent the notice of violation, we don't, I think, you know, the practice we always had of sort of a permit after the fact is flawed in various ways, so it's kind of better just to clear things up with enforcement when it is after the fact. So, like, you can determine the resolution to this and provide instructions to resolve the violation, and maybe that is that, you know, you don't think any corrective action is needed, or maybe you think some kind of mitigative planting. I mean, you could go anywhere from pull everything back out and let there be a pond there to nothing at all, or anywhere in between.
Has it been filled in?
Yeah, oh yeah, something like
Is it all filled in?
yeah. Oh, there's a little remaining topsoil that they'd like to spread, but they stopped, work after. Did you already see this one? This I just put today, but it doesn't show the full length of it, but,
As soon as I got the call, I told Skinner to stop.
yeah. And we do have that statement from the contractor that was involved in various attempts to create the pond and then hold water in the pond, for, you know. Oh, sorry. So anyway, I was just hoping that we'd be able to have sort of a constructive
So,
conversation.
here's a couple of thoughts I
Yeah.
have. And again, it's a function of the fact that we weren't involved with the construction of the pond. We don't really know how it was constructed or what its intended use was. I kind of feel, I mean, this is probably on the larger side for just a, you know, aesthetics landscaping feature, but if it was a man-made rubber lined pond that, you know, people put those in
Right.
all the time.
Like a koi
and-
pond or whatever, yeah.
And so like at what point does the size trip like something where,
Yeah.
you know, it would become a permitted activity in some way? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think just the fact that if there is a liner there, that speaks to its intended use to some extent.
Well, the other thing, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to, if it wasn't holding water, you know, I mean, yes, it did at some point, but when the liner ripped, they pulled that out, then they tried clay, that didn't work. So when does it become a pond and when is it not,
Well,
you know?
I guess that's, yeah, so do we know that the liner was ever removed or was it just
The
compromised?
contractor removed the
Yeah,
liner
he
when they.
removed
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
He said in his letter
So what did they
that-
add clay over the liner?
No, they
Oh.
attempted clay first, then they had to
Oh,
put
I'm
the
sorry.
liner over that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have it backwards.
Oh, did I read that backwards?
I think this is a good thing that they filled it in.
So this letter from William Skinner says it was initially constructed with a
With
rubber
the
liner. Due to ledge at the bottom, it severed the rubber liner and
Mm.
was able to hold water.
I think
Yeah.
his letter may not be clear on that, but the clay was put in first, then the attempt was to, when that did not work, cause that would ordinarily hold water in a feature like that, but when it failed to do so, then they added the liner. But I'd be
Although-
happy to get him to clarify that.
Yeah, although it seems like intentional, it seems clear how he wrote it, but,
Yes, but it sounds like it was made with a rubber liner, and due to the inability of it to hold water without a pump, there was the attempt to line it with clay.
So
which
that would
also
imply to me
failed.
that the liner was left in place, clay was put on top of it to try to patch, you know, essentially the leak.
yeah, that could be, they might not have pulled it
Yeah.
out then, they might have pulled it
Yeah.
out now,
Sure.
yeah.
But then-
Yeah, if it's important, we can get him to
But then when you
clarify
guys,
that as well.
prior to filling it in, you guys physically removed the rubber liner?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's why I felt more confident in my interpretation
Yeah,
of the reason,
so we know,
because
I
you
mean, we
could
know
see
there
the
was
liner.
a liner there,
Yeah.
based on the fact that it's been removed.
I'm just kicking myself that I didn't snap a picture of the
Yeah, I was
liner.
like, do you have any
I could
photos
see it.
of the line?
I confess to having scrolled through my photos in vain,
Yeah.
looking for a shot of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
kids in the liner.
Yeah, 'cause that's the thing, yeah, if we knew about it ahead of time, we might have just said, oh, yeah, it's this lined
Well,
farm.
and so one of the things I was thinking that might help this is, because like when I looked at this letter from Mr. Skinner, like it doesn't identify who he is or what his role is. I know you said he was the original contractor that dug the pond. I mean, one thought I have is an actual letter from him to the commission that states, you know, who he is and that he was the contractor that constructed it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
a statement of how it was constructed based on his recollection. I'm just throwing this out there. I mean, I don't know how the other commissioners feel about it, but,
Yeah,
and
things that
then-
he might have thought, like, he didn't have to say, you know, it's not clear to an outsider that he was the contractor,
Right,
yeah.
right. And then just stating, you know, kind of for the record in his letter that this is, his recollection of how it was constructed, and its intended use, and then, so, you know, what you were saying, Joanna, like, maybe at that point, if we're confident that that's how it was built and that's what it was used for, then the question is, on any property, if somebody had a, you know, line pond like this that
Right.
isn't working and poses safety issues, like, would we
Right,
have a
require a
concern about
permit.
filling it in, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right, we might have decided this didn't
Yeah.
need anything at all, and then, yeah. And I don't wanna doubt anyone's, like, statements, but it's one of those, you know, if I don't see it for myself, you know, it's tougher, but yeah, okay. No.
I don't think there's much more that we can do at this point, but just assume that going forward, that we're here, if you have any proposed activities, you'll come to us,
Permission, not forgiveness.
yeah.
I mean, in the public's defense, I do think we need to do a better job of making people aware of this commission
Yeah.
and when they need to apply for permits, because if I came to the state new, I would have no clue, and
Yeah.
it would depend on the contractor as well to know those.
Right,
So, I would be more than happy to take on that role to educate the public more, I mean, I can do it through
Good.
social media and things like
You know,
that,
sponsor
but.
Well, we've talked about doing some kind of pamphlet or something, and then I was hoping to steal, I knew Tolland was working on one, and then, last I checked, they hadn't actually made one, 'cause I was hoping we could just plagiarize.
Well, and the other thing is if you happen to run into the first selectman and find out when they would be doing their next newsletter, and
Oh,
if
yeah.
in the next one or two newsletters, we could, because they've featured other groups in town,
Oh,
like
okay.
the fire department, and, I mean, the Board of Ed always hogs like half of the
So-
newsletter anyway, but maybe,
If I heard Cindy correctly though, she was volunteering?
Right,
To-
to write in a very, lovely.
Well, I mean, so I know other commissions, the rec commission being an obvious one, has their own Facebook page that gets
Ah.
shared through various social media platforms, including on the town's Facebook page and other things, so, like, I don't know. Yeah, and I mean, that's probably a huge, I don't even know what it takes, I mean, I don't know what the undertaking would be, but basically, like, somebody would have to feed the information, you're just
Right.
posting it, right?
And you might be able to narrow the field by focusing on contractors who work in excavation, you know, 'cause if Skinner had so much to, again, not passing the buck here.
Yeah.
But, you know, all he had to say was, hey, I think we might need a permit for this, and I'd have been like, oh gosh.
well, you,
Go get one.
if you
Well, he was located in Hampton, Mass.
If
Yeah.
you-
Yeah.
if you stick around long enough, you'll find there are quite a few people in this town who are well aware of the
Yeah.
commission, and they do not care,
Right.
and they think they can do what they want, and they will wait until they're caught and hauled in here, and it's happened many times.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's that too.
But anyway, aside from the, advertisement, I mean, I would agree with Drew that it would be good for the record, to have a letter from Mr. Skinner just telling us a little bit more, and then maybe we'll just discuss it at the next meeting, but at this point, unless somebody comes up with some sort of plan,
Yeah.
I don't really think we need to do anything at this point.
Are you the caretaker of the property, or?
Yeah, I
your
guess you
role?
could say that. I'm
Is that-
the executive director of the Bay Center.
Okay, so you live on the premise?
I do,
Okay.
actually.
So,
That's why I said I was hunting through my pictures, looking for a picture of the kids close to that, cause we do live in like basically right there.
yeah.
I mean,
right,
when I
right.
said safety concern, I was actually thinking about some of my own kids who were just
Yeah,
young
no,
enough to try to jump off
yeah.
the dock.
Yeah. I think I saw you, cause I was at the fishing derby this year.
Oh, you
in
were?
February.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah,
saw you
yeah.
there, right? It was kind of a little bit of a gloomy day, but not bad, right?
Yeah, we avoided rain
Yeah.
right during the derby, and it's down for like
Yeah.
15 minutes
So I
after.
was just kinda thinking about that, cause that pond where the fishing derby was isn't really that far from this, is it?
Yeah, it's over the 100 feet part, but.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking like,
But
I don't know,
that
like, I
actually, the
guess-
derby was one of those things I was concerned about, because a lot of families would
yeah,
walk
there was
right
a lot
by
of
that.
kids, so I mean, there's the safety component there too, but I think just like, I don't know, the act of hosting a fishing derby in itself is kind of like I would say, the ecological benefit of some manner, or maybe more recreational benefit, but,
So we'll require them to do it next year then, too.
well, I was thinking like a monthly derby. No, but, you know,
I
just to
definitely
give
on
a
board with
little,
that.
you know, credit to that, in the sense that, you know, they are using, you know, the property and sharing it in that manner. I think that has value for the community as a whole. But I guess, you know, the other thing I was gonna ask is just because of your role on the properties as a whole, like, one, I mean, I don't know if there's been like a full flagging of wetlands. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
land out there, right?
I think only like kind of the front of the properties, not like the back,
Yeah,
as far as I know, but.
okay. And then, I guess, you know, now that you know who we are, like, if you
Right.
guys are doing other constructive type activities because there are wetlands out there, just Joanna's a phone call away, just run it by her and she could probably quickly
We
tell you.
chatted about this today, there's some sections of lawn that, of course, we could continue to cut and
And
make it
fertilize
into,
and, yeah.
and pay all the money to make it like a golf course, but I'm looking at some sections going, or it could just be meadow,
Yeah.
which would be its own sort of delight and add to
Bees
the
and
ecological
butterflies.
benefits of
Yeah,
the
'cause there is so much
Yeah.
lawn, like, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's 1.1 million square feet is what the fertilizing company quoted me.
Oh, is
So
that like
no matter
in the-
which
like
your,
in the
no matter what your
Chester's
multiplier is,
house?
it ends up being a lot of money.
No, no.
Is that-
That's all the
that's
properties combined?
where
Those
most of
three
the
addresses,
houses
if you
Yeah.
add up all the fertilized space, it's
Yeah.
1.1 million.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, and where it does abut, like the pond, that's like ends up running off into the ponds and like promoting algae and nutrification of the ponds too, so, yeah, if there was a
Of
way.
course, we don't put any of that out, we hire somebody with certification to do it, but we
Yeah.
all know that it still makes its way in.
Yeah, so yeah, if even like focusing on those areas where there are wetlands, and ponds, to sort
Have
of.
a natural buffer.
Yeah, and yeah, you'll still, I recognize you'll need access to the ponds, but maybe not as much, or maybe you could have like meadow and then a mowed area closer to the pond for access for fishing or whatever, but yeah, and I'm not a landscape architect, but there's, I could provide lists of plants or whatever, but that could be good buffers or filter some of those chemicals out before they get to the ponds maybe, but, and then
I mean,
you said you don't
essentially-
really have you don't have a lot of resident geese.
No,
Okay.
but I did come kinda late in the season, so maybe,
Yeah.
and I just wasn't as aware of
Yeah,
it. I'm not seeing as many of their left behind,
Okay.
so I'm feeling pretty confident that we don't have as many as some places.
yeah, 'cause some places, yeah, they're just, like at Shady Lake, they're like such a.
Yeah, you go to walk
oh,
around
yeah.
it and your shoes are covered in it.
They're
so, yeah.
Yeah, and they just
They're really
really,
good to eat, we should hunt more.
yeah, you know, yeah, they really will pollute an area like,
The
'cause they're
raptor
really,
bird population is, I think, enough to keep them at bay.
The what
Pretty-
population?
The bird raptors.
oh, the raptors, yeah,
They're pretty aggressive. I've seen
Okay.
them swoop down and get some pretty big things,
Okay.
including our house cat, so.
Oh, no,
The kids
really?
had to watch that one, that was pretty rough.
Oh, no.
The house
They were like,
cat?
That's pretty
"Oh,
grim.
look that way."
Oh, no.
Oh my goodness,
Had a big hog
That's
in
one of
the
my worst
backyard
fears.
the other day.
yeah,
Hey, those little bird killers, keep them inside.
Yeah.
it's not that, it's the coyote.
Cats are our biggest invasive species.
Lot of
Oh, I
coyotes
keep
up
them
there.
inside,
Yeah.
though, I take them outside sometimes, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, like, he's gonna sneak out one too many times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How,
But,
how big of a cat though?
Oh, yeah.
He was about 2 years old, so we have 2 new kittens
Weight?
now.
But how, I mean, my cat's like 18 pounds.
Yeah, he was,
That's a big
oh,
cat.
yeah, but he wasn't that big. I don't know, 10 pounds, somewhere in that range. It was a good catch. I have to, credit to the bird. That was,
This last summer, I was looking through my bathroom window, and there's a little baby bunny out there, I was like, oh, that baby bunny's so cute, and then I screamed, and the hawk dropped it.
Oh, wow.
And the bunny took off, I was like,
you
yeah.
take the net. There you go.
You saved it.
It was probably hungry though, that hawk.
Hawks gotta eat too. I didn't tell the kids that.
Can eat all the opossums they want, 'cause nobody likes those things.
Oh, I like
Oh, I love
possums.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And they,
That's like
They
the
don't
one-
carry
They-
rabies, they eat
they
the,
eat tons
Yeah, I
of
figured they could have all
ticks.
the snakes they wanted.
yeah,
No, that's fair.
No, they eat their weight in ticks.
yeah.
Oh, yeah?
They're one of the best things you could,
Yeah.
that and
But they
chickens.
do, they
and
get a bad rap. They get a bad rap.
Sorry.
They do.
No,
I shouldn't
yeah.
have.
They're really very peaceful, yeah. Okay, all right, so,
Anyway,
we'll let you go for now, and we'll let you know if we have any more discussion.
yeah, if you could have
Yeah.
So,
Skinner,
yeah, to follow up on that, you want to know a little bit more about how it was constructed and then clarify the liner placement.
well, and if he can,
Type of
or
liner.
more so if he can put himself into the story, 'cause he kind of,
Who he is,
yeah, he talks
Okay.
about how the pond came to be, but if he inserts into it his role, like just to state, I personally, with my
You gotta forgive these
construction firm.
construction guys, they weren't hired for their writing ability.
Right, he did misspell
That's a good
Hillsdale
point.
in the header.
Yeah,
Well,
he did,
then-
yeah, I noticed that and I was like, I don't know, it adds
He
to the
can-
authenticity.
He can dictate to you, you can write it and he can sign
If
it.
I'd corrected that, then you might have been like, I don't know.
I don't know if a contractor wrote this one. But yeah, if you could just insert his
Sure.
role into it more so. I think the story's all right, is that what you're getting at, Drew? Just to
Yeah.
say
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I was part of the team, my construction firm did this and that, and,
Yeah, 'cause he's got a company, a business, I'm assuming, like a.
Yeah, Skinner Excavation, so
So
he's the
maybe just
namesake.
stating that, like, 'cause it's not necessarily on his letterhead or whatever, so. just
yeah.
Stating it's his company, they constructed it, this is how it was constructed, and this is what he
Yep.
knows it was used for.
Yeah, just to personalize it, and, yeah.
Got it, sure.
Okay. Sorry to make you sit through that whole dreadful meeting.
Well, I got to know more about the commission, right?
Right.
Thank you guys for your work on this. I mean,
Thank you.
clearly you're willing to put in the hours on it.
I know
We're
it.
not, we're not
Right.
We
so
haven't had a
willing.
meeting the past 2 months.
Well, that's true, I did hear that.
We're usually out by 8:15 or so, this is
Oh,
like,
God.
Making up for lost.
I didn't realize what time it was.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
have a good night.
Thank you.
Do you have a staff report?
All right, let's see how we can fly through.
Yeah.
Well,
All
there's
right, we have no audience. Yeah, okay. Okay, nothing super critical. There's, one of those crumbling foundation replacements at 279 Springfield. Oh, thanks. And, so I'm working with them. They actually just called me today to let me know they'll be, putting in the silt fence and everything, and I had told them I wanted to look at it, 'cause it's a very wet property. But it, we had determined that those did not require a
Right.
permit.
Yep.
There's a possible violation at 35 Cricket where a pool company, not Stafford Pool, but a different pool company out of Massachusetts, who had contacted me back in March to ask about this property, and I told them there very well could be wetland soils there, and that, if they've either applied for a permit or gave me permission to enter, I would, do my sanity check, but that likely they would need a soil scientist there. And wouldn't you know, somehow there's now it's fully dug out, I should have printed a picture, but it's literally a pool just without the liner at this point. They've already completely excavated, that you can see where the deep end is, and there's all gravel in there. and so now the sanitarian and I went to look, cause they had no permits at all, they didn't apply for a building permit or anything, and also the sanitarian would have to verify that they'd still be like a reserve area for the septic. But looking back, Steve Jacobs' notes noted like buried wetland soils, in one area, and the septic system's curiously, like, instead of just gravity fed out behind the house, it's like pumped up around to the side of the house, presumably because the soils were not suitable behind the house, because they're probably wetland soils. But so my augering around on either side of the pool, it certainly looks suspiciously like wetland soils to me, so I told them that they need a soil scientist, and so we'll have to deal with that. If it was dug in a wetland, what kind of restoration they need.
What did the owner have to say about the fact that she didn't pull any permits or anything?
So, they thought the pool company was on it. The pool company never told them that I said they shouldn't even clear trees or I literally like said all that in my email, like, don't do anything.
But the owner is ultimately
They are ultimately responsible, yes, yeah. So they said, they went and they paid to have a survey done and everything, and then, like, to submit with the building permit application, and the pool company never picked up the survey or anything. So just the property owner, like, last week came in with the survey to show us and everything, but the wetlands aren't delineated on it, so.
Who's the pool company?
This is Sunsplash Pool, they're in Massachusetts, I forget if they're in Long Meadow or.
I'll be sending my letter
When I
to those
specifically
companies.
told them, like, yeah.
But the other thing is just like the Stafford Pool Company, the owners didn't notice all these boulders being brought into
yeah.
the backyard.
No, that's.
Wait, he didn't put a
they-
boulder wall on his property without the owner's permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really,
And they actually wrote on the application that he did not notice.
Yeah, that's, I'm not that now.
Was he gone for the summer?
yeah, he said, well, the pool company was supposed to follow the plans, but yeah, who knows, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you don't notice there wasn't supposed to be this huge wall, I mean, it's my height, like, and
130 feet long of huge boulders, and you didn't notice,
Yeah.
hundreds of trucks coming in hauling all this stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. All right, so
yeah, otherwise, there's some, I'm gonna talk with the town attorney about whether we should be requiring bonds, like erosion control bonds for some of these large construction projects, because there's been some question with, like, with Soapstone Estates, and also like with Shady Lake, where, we came to a point where there was supposed to be a detention basin down at the end of, Lake Drive, and the houses were being built, and they were supposed to discharge to this detention basin, but there was no detention basin, and, like, and I was running out of opportunities to require it to be built, and people were buying off individual, like, units to build, and no one wanted to be responsible for this basin, and eventually I got it built, but it's like, now with Soapstone, it's coming up because, the developer, and this is on Eleanor, the developer is not happy that I keep requiring these nominal, like $500 lawn bonds, until a lawn's fully established, and that's what we've always done. So looking at the regs, and the town charter, there's all kinds of opportunities where we could be bonding these projects, and it's kind of bewildering to me that no commissions, like planning, like, I don't know who would be best to enforce that, but to require just a construction bond for, like, this project, because they don't want these $500 lawn bonds, and I see how that doesn't really make sense on this active construction site where they're doing all these things at once. But I think the alternative is a large bond at the beginning, and I can see in our regs where we can require bonds from the Wetland Commission. So it might be, it's something I wanna talk to the town attorney about, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Doesn't zoning require bonds?
I think sometimes they have, and I don't know if it's because, Jeff Ford's not really like on staff, so there's, I think maybe if anyone, it would've been the town engineer to recommend that kind of thing, and if it's just kind of fallen through the cracks or whatever, but.
I think it's in the regs,
But
'cause
yeah,
I
there
was on zoning for a
Oh,
while.
yeah,
Dan's on.
yeah.
Yeah, they, I saw one case where, they didn't finish the, deck in the back, you know, and they wouldn't let them, they were gonna move in, and they would not let them move in.
Well, we'll do that, we won't let them have a CO, that's kinda like our last line of defense, but yeah, and some of these, I guess it's coming up more so with these, developments that don't have lots, So both like Shady Lake and the Soapstone one, it's like you can't hold like one property owner responsible because it's like they don't have a lot. So we might need some other mechanism, cause I could see why the lawn bond doesn't make a lot of sense with these, but then I should be able to have some kind of bond in place so that if the detention basin's not right or something, that we can require them to fix it, so,
So if we had a
They get
bond
their-
though,
They get their money back after they, do
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's not
Right.
costing them anything.
yeah, it's
Do
just in
things right,
case,
you know?
if for some reason they, and that's the other thing, if they like go bankrupt and walk away, then like, what does the town do? So it's supposed to be there, so like,
but it does cost them something to take the bond out, right?
yeah, most of them just do a check, so we are holding their money, but if it was this
Oh,
larger
that's
construction
the
bond, it would
cash
probably be
bond then?
different.
Okay.
For the lawn bonds, we just take checks usually, but I think for a larger construction bond, they'd probably do like an actual bond, it probably would cost them something, um,
Gravel banks, they always made them bond
yeah.
to make sure they reclaimed it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I went through the charter and I kind of found everywhere it refers, and there's all kinds of places where we could be requiring bonds. And, so this might backfire on that developer because instead of these little $500 bonds, it might be like, oh no, we're gonna have like a $80,000 bond.
Yeah. So if we were to do it as part of, a wetlands application, it would be tied to the activities related to that application, right? Like in this, Soapstone Estates, it'd be like the stormwater retention basin and,
Yeah. Yeah, so for our regs say, upon approval of the application and prior to issuance of a permit, the applicant may, at the discretion of the commission, be required to file a bond with such surety in the amount and in a form approved by the commission. The bond or surety shall be conditioned on compliance with all provisions of these regulations and the terms, conditions, and limitations established in the permit. So that's like if it was a wetlands permit issue, and then there's also like opportunities, there's like an ordinance for erosion and sediment control that allows there to be a bond filed with the town treasurer, and then there's also different like maintenance bond opportunities or subdivisions, so that would be in planning, that there could be a performance bond with like the planning process.
Planning has them too, don't they?
Yeah, they theoretically, but for some reason, like, a lot of these haven't had any bonds,
I think the ones that you have problems with is probably the ones you would want a bond.
yeah, but then it's like, then you have to be consistent and,
I think we should start getting bonds for all pool applications.
I know, yeah. I know, it's like pretty crazy,
It's a
but,
large
You know,
project.
you know something, and you can sell them easy by just telling them, that's just to get what you want done right. Look at what happened, you know, with here, you know, with this guy, you know?
yeah.
And, like, we had a gravel bank, and I was glad to pay the bond, because I knew after they got through with it, it was gonna get finished
It was gonna be a
by
good
them,
plan.
or they were gonna finish it,
Oh, yeah,
you know? So
Mhm.
I was pleased with it, you know?
yeah,
You get your money back.
yeah, right, yeah,
In fact, I made the contractor hold the bond, and so they were realists. you
yes,
know?
that's a good idea, yeah,
Yeah, make the contractor hold it, see those houses there? And have the hot contract hold it, and you won't sign it off unless it's whatever you want done to it.
yeah,
Incentive to do
That way
it,
the
right?
people will be covered and the
Mhm.
contractors will do the right job.
yeah. Yeah, 'cause then at the point with like the Shady Lake one is just, you know, the development had already like kinda turned hands from the developer to the association, and then it's like, alright, who's gonna pay to do this now? But, yeah.
Anything else you need?
I think that's good enough for staff reports.
Okay, motion to accept Joanna's report.
I'll make the motion, we accept the staff report.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I need to find my correspondence, but I know we have a JI bill, and there's the Cacuic, let's see. Cacuic renewal, that's correspondence. Alright, well, I guess I'll start with that. So for correspondence, really, we keep talking about Shady Lake, but there's been all this, work toward repairing the dam, well, trying to get to the point to repair the dam, and finally, they were able to file with Deep as, under the general permit, and they're gonna do like the kind of minimal work, to repair the cap and replace stones, and they're not gonna mess with the sluiceway like they had wanted to. So it's kind of the simpler thing, but they did have to notify the town that they were filing under the general permit to repair the dam. So they don't have to come to us for it, but we've been notified of what they'll be doing. And there'll be a little bit of concrete work, but it's gonna be like all pretty superficial. And because, well, I don't know now how low it is, but it was so low that they weren't even gonna have to like de-water or sandbag or anything. I don't know now, I haven't been back since all this rain, but, the other correspondence was the official statement, the proclamation by the governor that this year, 2022, is the year of inland wetlands and watercourses. And then, yeah, for Bill, and now we get this in like September. And so we should have been celebrating all year. And then, for bills, the Cacuic renewal is $65. And, the JI bill is $55.09.
Motion to pay the bills.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's all for that, and then we're on to the minutes from June 1st. Oh, you had asked for those, and then
That's all right,
When I went
Joan had
online.
them when I read hers.
oh, thank you.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes from June 1.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for June 1st,
Second.
as written.
I'll second that.
And nobody has any,
Change it up a little.
No, I didn't see anything.
It's tough when there's like not everybody's, like, whose turn is it?
I know, everyone's looking at everyone.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Everybody will
Pass
get that,
the
one,
bishop.
right?
10 o'clock.
Who wants to second this one?
I'll second that.
Unfortunately, I think we've broken a record for
I think so.
32 years
I
on the
think they're
commission.
gonna
I've
last
never
so
had-
That was a
long,
tough
I'm
one,
not
too,
gonna
the
come anymore.
Conversation was all over the place.
I know.
No, it's my day off tomorrow, so
You can sleep till you wake up, huh?
that's right.
So,
It'll be on YouTube if we really have
And
it.
it usually
Well, I was
happens
kinda
that
happy
I
that
end up
Jarvis Farms
listening
got the
early
seal.